Currently, there are approximately 20 billion animals inhabiting our world. If everything were ideal, we would have 5 billion more animals on Earth. But many species have gone extinct, and around 44,000 species are currently endangered. The largest, most recent mass extinction event in history occurred during the Dinosaur era, leading to the eradication of 75% of species on Earth. The Tulachi wallaby is a long-lost relative of today's kangaroo, but they had a hidden superpower, night vision. That's why they were mostly active at night. They were 3 feet tall and fed on grass, fruit leaves, and other plants. Wallabies lived in grassy areas near swamps and other water bodies, but not for long. By the 19th century, their numbers had gone down, bringing them to the edge of extinction. Only 14 wallabies had been left in the wild by 1920. A rescue mission was launched. They tried to capture the last 14 animals to protect them. But the situation got out of control and 10 wallabies lost their lives. The 4 remaining ones were transferred to a special facility, and in 1935, the last animal passed away. Only one picture of the Tulachi wallaby is left now. There were reports of the animal's sightings after that, but no proof was shown, and the creature was officially declared extinct in the 70s. Short-faced bears were a unique species that lived in North America, particularly Alaska. It was a massive bear, weighing around 1,500 pounds. When standing on its hind legs, it was around 12 feet tall, a whole foot taller than today's biggest beast in this family, the polar bear. This animal was different from today's bears because almost all of them are omnivores, except for polar bears. But this monster was solely carnivorous, which was the reason for their extinction. During the end of the Ice Age, many herbivores were gone, and those bears did not have enough food to survive. They were the Usain Bolt of the bear world, the fastest Bruins to have ever lived, reaching a top speed of 40 miles per hour, which is 5 miles faster than grizzlies. There are around 400 million pigeons in the world now. Some time ago, in America, a species of birds called passenger pigeons were abundant throughout the country, especially in the eastern forests. There were more than 1 billion of them, but they went from 1 billion to 0 in a few years. They had small heads and necks, but long tails and wings and strong breast muscles that allowed them to fly super long distances. The last passenger pigeon passed away in captivity in 1914. It was named Martha. With that, the ecosystem in the U.S. has never seen this bird again. Now, elks are enormous animals, but they look tiny when you compare them to long-gone Irish elks. That elk was around 7 feet tall at the shoulder with a humongous antler of 12 feet. Today, elk are only 4.5 feet tall at the shoulder and have around 4-foot-long antlers. Despite its name, this elk was found all over the world, from Asia to Europe. It got its name because, in Ireland near Dublin, researchers found a perfectly preserved specimen. Since then, it's been called the Irish elk. The last one passed away in Ireland. The main reason for their disappearance was their inability to adapt to changes. When the Ice Age ended, the elk could not survive and became extinct. Now, somewhere deep in the forests of Costa Rica lives the interesting-looking golden toad. It was discovered in 1966 in one particular spot where all toads would gather to mate. In 1967, a large population of this golden nugget was noted in that same spot. But the following year, only 10 to 11 toads were seen, and the year after that, in 1968, only one lonely male toad showed up at the spot. For years, there were searches for golden toads. In 2004, the toads were officially declared extinct. Humans were not responsible this time. The drought in the area in the 80s had a significant impact on the toads. Still, the last straw was the arrival of a new fungal species that caused the animal's skin to thicken, eventually leading to the toad passing away. This chytrid fungus is responsible for the extinction of more than 90 frog and amphibian species, becoming one of the biggest threats to their lives. Now, Canada is a very cold country, no surprise there, and nobody would expect tropical birds like parrots to live there. However, there was a parrot species that lived in America and some parts of Canada. I'm talking about the Carolina parakeet. Those were truly beautiful birds with orange-yellowish heads and green bodies. Their favorite rest spots were big trees alongside rivers. This parrot's favorite food was cocklebur seeds, which are poisonous to us, but the bird had no problem eating them. Also, they used the dangerous cockleburs as a defense mechanism. After they ingested loads of them, their meat became poisonous, and predators do not enjoy eating toxic birds. Carolina parakeets were abundant, there were millions of them. But since the Ice Age, their numbers had been gradually going down because of natural reasons, mainly temperature. By 1935, no such parakeets were left in the wild. Today's African lion had a much more prominent and notorious cousin, the Barbary lion. Those cats were mentioned in many famous old books. They were described as mean, terrifying beasts. It's believed that they were the largest lion species ever. Those big cats weighed around 600 pounds and were 9 feet from the head to tail. Unfortunately, this lion was declared extinct in the 90s due to many factors. Today, we only have one photo of this animal taken from a plane. Paradise parrots were native to Australia. They were genuinely amazing birds with captivating colors. What was unique about them was their nesting habits. They only nested in termite mounds. This parrot was always on the edge of extinction, and the reason for that is still unknown. Mice, rats, and other animals also hunted them, and it added fuel to the fire. The last bird was spotted in the year 1972. Since then, paradise parrots have only been seen in museums. The Gulf of Mexico was once home to Caribbean monk seals. This species of seals enjoyed spending time in the warm subtropical climate of the Caribbean. Most of the time, they were found near reefs and islands, foraging for food. Like most of us, they also loved sandy beaches and were usually seen in groups of 100 seals, resting before the next adventure. In the year 1886, monk seals were declared extinct. You can still see this animal in 2 museums. Both are located in the UK. As we all know, zebras have black and white stripes. But once, a zebra species had only half the body covered with brown and white stripes. The rest was just brown, and the belly was white. It was called the quagga. They lived in the southern part of Africa in grass fields and wet pastures, like today's zebras, and ate grass and other plants. The last quagga perished in 1888, but not all hope is lost. Today, extensive research is being done to bring this animal back into the wild. Australia is home to many outlandish animals, but the craziest ones are probably gastric brooding frogs. This species is not like your ordinary frog that lays eggs. They hatch their young inside their stomach and give birth by vomiting around 25 fully formed young frogs. Sometimes their stomach becomes so bloated that they have to breathe through their skin. 2 species of this frog were discovered in the northern and southern parts of Australia in the 1970s by Mike Taylor. A decade after their discovery, both species are gone. The main reason for their extinction is the chytrid fungus. Luckily for them, they're also part of a de-extinction program that's putting serious efforts into bringing them back into the wild.
The liger is probably the most popular hybrid animal and an incredibly large cat. You won't see them in the wild. People most deliberately breed them. Lions and tigers don't even inhabit the same areas. So, a liger is a mix of a male lion and a female tiger, and they can grow to be very big in a pretty short period of time. They're actually the biggest cats in the world. Hercules, the largest recorded liger, is a real example of that. 922 pounds and 10.8 feet long. Imagine taking him for a walk. Ligers are mostly way bigger than either of their parents. In most cases, they behave and look more like lions than tigers. But they have some tiger traits too. For example, striped backs, and they're crazy about swimming. The taigan. Nobody could fault you for thinking the taigan and liger are basically the same animal. I mean, they're both a combination of tigers and lions. But a taigan comes from a crossbreeding of a male tiger and a female lion. They're usually smaller than their parents, and definitely much smaller than their giant, could you call them siblings? In most cases, they inherit charming looks from their tiger fathers, but they get some interesting traits from their mother's side too. For example, love for socialization and the ability to roar. Hands down, one of the rarest hybrid animals in the world are wolfins. These fellas are a mashup of a female bottlenose dolphin and a male false killer whale. Its name might make you think differently, but a false killer whale belongs to the dolphin family. They're not even related to killer whales. Wolfins are such an interesting 50-50 mix and balance of their parents. They have dark gray skin, the perfect blend of a black false killer whale and light gray dolphin skin. Dolphins have anywhere between 80 and 100 teeth. False killer whales have 44, and their hybrid young is halfway, with 66 teeth in total. What would it look like if algae and a slug paired? No need to imagine. You have a green sea slug to check the result. It lives in salt marshes in Canada and New England, and it's possibly the weirdest hybrid creature you'll see in this video, and in general. Part plant, part animal. So, some slugs seem to have been very sneaky while stealing the genes from innocent algae that they have eaten to enable them to look like this. Since they're partially a plant, they can produce the plant pigment called chlorophyll. That means these unusual slugs can even photosynthesize. That's the process plants use to turn sunlight into energy. So they produce their own molecules that contain energy without having to eat anything at all. When scientists first discovered it, a green sea slug was the first case of a multicellular animal that's able to produce chlorophyll. What do you get when you mix a male leopard and a female lion? You get an interesting hybrid called a lepin. These animals grow to be almost as big as lions, but they still have shorter legs, similar to their father leopard. They inherit some of his other traits too, like a love for climbing and swimming. You can have a union with a male lion and a female leopard too, and the result is called a leopard. Male lions are usually around 10 feet long and weigh about 500 pounds. The female leopard is way smaller, only 5 feet long, with a weight of about 80 pounds. The difference in size here is too big, so this pairing really doesn't happen that often. Okay, how about a buffalo and a cow? When you were little, maybe you thought that they could be a good match, but in reality, the combination creates an unusual hybrid animal called a beefalo. Not many types of hybrid animals can reproduce on their own, but a beefalo can do it. When a grizzly and a polar bear get together, it results in a growler bear, or grizzly bear, or grizzlar, whichever you like the most. You can see them even in the wild. These two types of bears have a mutual contempt for one another. Yep, they're not good at living together in a mutual habitat. But even though it's rare, the love can still happen and result in these cute caramel-colored hybrid growler bears. In most cases, they'll be a bit smaller than polar bears, on average 60 inches tall at the shoulder, and approximate weight 1,000 pounds. But they're well equipped for surviving in warmer climates, thanks to the genes they got from their grizzly family side. Now let's get to one pretty tough fella, the jag lion. As its name implies, it's the hybrid of a jaguar and a lion. We don't know much about these intriguing big cats because only a few of them exist. But there was an unintentional mixing between a black jaguar and a lioness, which eventually resulted in 2 jag-lion cubs. One had a dark gray coat with black spots because of the dominant melanin gene black jaguars usually have. The other one had a lion color and the rosette pattern spots that remind you of a jaguar. Yep, you already know it. There are also liguars, a hybrid of a female jaguar and a male lion. That's some colorful family. Speaking of wild cats, have you ever heard of a savanna cat? Savanna cats are in both categories of house pets and exotic hybrids, since they're a mix of a domestic cat and a wild African serval hybrid animal. We're talking about striking animals, almost as big as a domestic cat. But what gives them their exotic look are their tall bodies, slender forms, and spotted coats. These cats are extremely loyal, intelligent, and loving creatures. Here's one unexpected mixture: a zebroid. Technically, it's a name people use to describe a hybrid of a zebra and any equine species. But when you pair a zebra and a horse, their young is called a zorse. Zebra hybrids mostly look like whichever animals they've been crossbred with, but with the striped coat of a pure zebra. Most of these hybrid creatures don't even have fully striped coats. You can mostly see the stripes on non-white areas of their bodies and legs. Speaking of zebra hybrids, check out this adorable creature. It's called a zonkey, or zedonk, zebras, zenki. Take your pick. They're mostly either tan, gray, or brown in color. You'll distinguish them by unique stripes that are darkest on their legs and belly. Unlike some hybrids, such as the liger, zonkies can normally live in the wild. In fact, that's where you can find them, living life to the fullest across savannas and open woodland, mostly in Africa. Can you guess what a geep is? Yep, a combination of goat and sheep, and definitely one of the most adorable and cuddliest hybrid creatures in this video. Geeps are very rare. Some experts even believe it's possible that they're not true hybrids, but just sheep with certain genetic abnormalities. After all, sheep and goats do carry different numbers of chromosomes, which means cross-species mixes are almost impossible. When a camel and a llama get together, you get a cute little thing called a kama. Similar to beefalo, the kama also produces the best economic traits of both its parents. The first one was born in 1998. Kamas don't have camel humps. Their body is covered in soft, fleecy fur, similar to their llama side of the family. They can drink big amounts of water at a time, so they can survive with almost no water at all for pretty long periods. The coy wolf is a hybrid where nothing looks that unusual to most people, since the coyote and the wolf are not that drastically different in their looks. After all, these two species only diverged around 200,000 years ago. Now they're still able to mate and bring coy wolf cubs to the world. People living in eastern Canada and the US might be familiar with these smart, adaptable animals that inhabit their forests, neighborhood parks, or sometimes even cities. These hybrids have emerged over the past century or so, and they've picked up the characteristics of both their parents. When a coy wolf is fully grown, it's somewhere in between the size of both parents, but it's also 55 pounds heavier than pure coyotes and has a bigger jaw, longer legs, smaller ears, and a bushier tail. Check out the narluga, an extremely rare creature whose parents are a narwhal and a beluga whale. It's a pretty strange animal, but far from being lonely, they mostly live in the North Atlantic. Scientists had suspected their existence for decades. In 1990, they found an unusual-looking whale skull located in an Inuit hunter's tool shed in Greenland. People from that area said that there were other similar-looking animals, and they fit the description of neither a beluga whale nor a narwhal. People said they had gray skin, narwhal-like tails, and beluga-like flippers. Narwhals and beluga whales are similar in size, and they share a family, the Monodontidae family. So it may not even be that surprising that they're able to successfully breed in the wild.
Australia used to have its own giants. Those were huge animals that could have dwarfed anything living on this continent these days. Scientists found the remains of many of those ancient creatures in the Narracuta Caves in South Australia, 4 hours away from Adelaide. It's a lovely region, but it can be treacherous. Watch out for holes the ground is pocked with. Known as pitfall traps, many of them are no wider than a coffee table. They're deep and plunge into the darkest of caverns. One of such caverns is called Victoria Fossil Cave, and it's a treasury that's been hiding the bones of around 45,000 animals for centuries. Some of the oldest bones belong to creatures far more terrifying than any animal you can encounter today. Those were the ancient Australian megafauna, huge beasts that roamed the continent during the Pleistocene epoch. During those, there were giant snakes, huge flightless birds, wombat-like creatures the size of a rhinoceros, and many others. One of the largest examples of the Australian megafauna scientists have discovered so far is the Diprotodon. That giant herbivorous creature was 10 feet long and 6.5 feet tall. and weighed more than 6,000 pounds, about as much as a small Asian elephant. Even though this terrifying beast didn't eat meat, it could have smashed other animals with its sheer weight. Scientists have found the remains of hundreds of such creatures all over Australia, so it's safe to say that no other animal from that time or in that location was larger than this giant. Despite its creepy appearance, the Diprotodon was a relative to the modern-day wombat, and those are known to sometimes pounce humans. The Diprotodon had toes that pointed inward and were well suited for digging burrows. On the other hand, Diprotodon was a giant, and it was unlikely that it used to do so. It was likely a trait it had inherited from its smaller burrowing ancestors, or it could have used its claws to search for roots. This theory is supported by the fact that the animal's pouch was facing backward. It prevented any dirt from collecting inside while the creature was digging. Since this animal was so big, it didn't have to worry much about predators. Up until 60,000 years ago, when the first humans appeared on the continent, full-grown Diprotodons only had to look out for creatures like the quincana. Measuring in at a whopping 20 feet long, the quincana was a land crocodile. It lived in Australia from around 20 million to 40,000 years ago. It disappeared along with most other mega creatures of the last ice age. It's thought to be the result of the first humans coming to the continent. Even though the quincana was extremely fast and dangerous, it was possible that this creature got out-competed by human hunters who took all available prey. Unlike modern crocodiles that are mainly aquatic, that mighty beast was a land dweller. Scientists figured it out by studying the quincana's legs. They were able to support and carry the body clear off the ground. It means there was no escape for ancient people once the quincana spotted them. Modern crocodiles can only push themselves along on their bellies. Such an adaptation allowed the quincana to chase its prey for long periods of time, exhausting it in the process. Another creepy feature of this ancient monster was its teeth. Aquatic crocs have conical teeth. Those are great for gripping and holding on to prey underwater. But quincana had knife-like teeth, ideal for slicing soft-bodied animals like, mammals. Another Australian monster, Thylacoleo, wasn't all that large, but it didn't make it any less terrifying. It was still among the top predators and the biggest carnivorous animals in Australia. This creature was a true oddity of nature, even by prehistoric standards. First, its teeth resembled not those of a regular predator, but those of a rodent. Its front incisors were enlarged, taking the place of canines. Premolars were also shaped like blades. They were used for cutting flesh and bone. At first, scientists thought that Thylacoleo used those teeth to eat nuts and fruits. But later, a study showed that the use of such teeth was better suited on necks and spines. The jaws of this ancient creature were immensely powerful. A 220-pound Thylacoleo had a bite force similar to that of a present-day 550-pound lion. It means that the animal could easily bring down prey much larger than itself. Then there was Thylacoleo's tail. It had strong muscles which provided the animal with the ability to use the tail as support when tackling large prey. The Thylacoleo had retractable claws, and this feature is very uncommon among marsupials. It allowed the animal to keep its razor-sharp hooks from getting blunt and could help it get a better grip on its prey. Scientists are quite sure that, like today's leopards, the Thylacoleo could climb trees and jump on other animals from above. It was done so fast and stealthily they never knew what hit them. The creature's rear feet support this theory. The first toe there was reduced, but the foot had a rough pad like what modern-day possums have. It allowed them to have a better grip while climbing. Right after scientists found the first skull of the Meliolania, this animal was classified as a lizard. That's why its name translates to small groomer. But after they discovered more complete fossils, it turned out that the Meliolania was a giant turtle. But that's not all. It was one of the largest land turtles to ever have existed. The main reason researchers initially believed the creature to be a lizard was the fact that its skull was adorned with a series of spikes. It's something the modern-day horned lizard can boast. But even after discovering the true nature of the Meliolania, scientists still don't know how to properly catalog it. It might have been a creature that folded its neck under its spine, or it could have folded it to the side. Beside those defensive mechanisms on its head, the Meliolania was also equipped with a spiked tail, which was probably used to prevent predators from attacking the animal from behind. Most species of the Meliolania disappeared around 2,000 to 3,000 years ago because of humans who hunted them to extinction in both Australia and on the surrounding islands. It took around 2 centuries for these turtles to go extinct in that region of the globe. The Megalania was a giant Australian lizard that existed at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. It looked like a Komodo dragon and the Australian monitor lizard, which are both believed to be Megalania's closest living relatives. Fossils tell us that the ancient animal was anywhere from 15 to 26 feet in length. Ow! The youngest fossil remains of this ancient Australian monitor lizard date back to about 50,000 years ago. The first indigenous settlers must have encountered Megalania, which led to the lizard's extinction. Originally, scientists thought that the Megalania was the only member of the genus Megalania, but these days it belongs to the genus Venomous, which means that the prehistoric creature is closely related to other Australian monitor lizards. Our next giant creature on the list was once dubbed an ostrich on steroids. I mean, look at it. It was the last of the thunderbirds to go extinct in Australia. The Genyornis lived on the continent at the same time as early humans. They might have coexisted for 15,000 years or so before the huge bird eventually disappeared. This theory has some proof. The bird's fossils found along with human artifacts. Some cave paintings also depict flightless birds similar to the Genyornis in size and shape. Although it wasn't the largest bird in Australia, the goose-like creature was still as tall as a grown-up man and weighed around 550 pounds. Even a modern-day ostrich can be dangerous if it feels threatened. Imagine meeting its giant prehistoric relative. Scientists are still arguing about its diet. Many believe the creature was an herbivore, but there's still a chance that the Genyornis was a partial scavenger. Its small, stubby wings and powerful hoof-like legs hint that the bird could have been a plant eater. But its huge beak and exceptionally deep lower jaw evoke suspicion. Such features are highly unusual in birds.
Texas is home to some of the oddest, creepiest, and most unusual animals you've ever heard of. It might come as a surprise, but this state is full of creatures you'll hardly see in other places. So, let's have a look at the most amazing ones. This truly beautiful bright blue creature is called the blue sea dragon. Despite such an imposing name, the critter is actually tiny. Usually no bigger than a grape. You may find it on the beach or floating beside you in the water. Now, you need to remember one thing. However pretty this little slug may look, never ever touch it. One tourist spotted a few of these pretty dragons on the shore of Mustang Island. He scooped one of the creatures up. He wanted to film it. Luckily, he put it back into the water before it could sting him. Otherwise, it would have ended badly since the blue sea dragon is venomous. Despite their tiny size, their sting can pack a punch. All because of their diet. Their favorite dish is the Portuguese man-o-war, a jellyfish that has enough venom to paralyze small fish and crustaceans. The blue dragons first use mucus to neutralize the jellyfish's infamous stinging cells. And then, they steal these cells from the man-o-war's tentacles and store and concentrate them within their own tissues. Then, they release these stinging cells on contact, which makes their own sting more powerful, even worse than that of the man-o-war itself. These awesome creatures are also extremely sneaky. Even though their appearance is bright, to say the least, they're well-known masters of disguise. You see that vibrant blue coloring is actually on their bellies, and when they float on their backs, they simply blend with the water. As for their backs, they're gray to camouflage these animals on the seafloor. Now how about a funny fact? A group of tiny dragons floating together is called a blue fleet. And another fact, blue dragons normally lay a string of around 16 eggs, and it takes them 3 days or so to hatch into larvae. Blue sea dragons rarely make it to the shore. They're soft-bodied, so when the animals finally get through the surf zone and are deposited on the shore, they're already broken apart. And still, watch out! Even in this case, the venom in their bodies doesn't dissipate. But of course, blue sea dragons aren't the only unusual animals inhabiting Texas. Have a look at this nightmarish creature, poisonous, slimy, and kinda immortal. Meet the hammerhead worm. The worst thing? It might be lurking in your garden while you're watching this video. You can easily recognize this worm by its creepy, spade-shaped head. It doesn't look like any other invertebrate you've ever seen. Or any other creature, that is. At first, it was only found in East Texas. But later, researchers spotted these spine-chilling creatures in North, Central, and South Texas. Basically everywhere but the arid areas of West Texas. One of the most terrifying things about this worm might be its length. This creature can grow as long as 1 foot. Luckily, such giants aren't very common. Most hammerhead worms only reach 6 inches in length. You can come across 2 species of these worms in Texas, and both of them will have a dark stripe down the middle. The larger of these 2 species munches on earthworms, which is actually a big problem. You might know that earthworms play an important role in keeping the soil rich in minerals and overall healthy. If earthworms disappear, plants in such areas won't be getting the nutrients they need. Even for humans and pets, meeting a hammerhead worm isn't the most pleasant experience either. Hammerheads are the only terrestrial invertebrates that secrete a very dangerous neurotoxin, the same as pufferfish produce. Thanks to the sheer size of the human body, touching a hammerhead worm won't hurt you too much, but it may still cause your hand to start tingling or even go numb. It's much more dangerous for pets. There have been cases when dogs ate hammerheads, which left them feeling sick for the whole day. Interestingly, these worms are native to Southeast Asia. But they must have mastered the art of hitchhiking, since in the early 1900s they were already found in the US. Keep in mind that if you want to get rid of a hammerhead worm, which is the best course of action, the worst thing you can do is chop it with a shovel. The thing is, flatworms reproduce by ripping themselves in half, so by cutting it, you actually help the populations of the worms, turning 1 into 2. That's the reason why hammerheads are sometimes described as immortal, which is a bit of a stretch since these creatures can't survive in vinegar or salt. Now, even though you're safe from the hammerhead worm in West Texas, it doesn't mean you can't come across another dangerous animal, such as the land lobster from hell. These creatures are also known as vinegaroons, and they're not real crustaceans, they're arachnids. Huh? Who would have guessed? Anyway, these 8-legged critters have a really nasty bite, but it's not the worst thing about them. Land lobsters, brace yourself, spray vinegar-like 85% acid from their tails. Mostly they do it to protect themselves, but it still sounds like an unfriendly thing to do, right? A land lobster can also pinch a finger that's gotten too close with its heavy mouth parts. At the base of their abdomens, vinegaroons have long whip-like tails. That's why these arachnids are often called whip scorpions, even though they're neither related to scorpions nor have stingers. Summer rains lure these arachnids out of their burrows in search of food and love. Luckily, experts claim that land lobsters aren't poisonous to humans, but they're very likely to leave a mark with their large pinchers, which they use to capture insects. Vinegaroons can be considered useful since they eat millipedes, crickets, scorpions, and cockroaches. They hunt by sensing the vibrations of their prey with those long front legs of theirs. Since land lobsters prefer to come out after dark, you aren't likely to see one in the daylight. But if you stumble upon one, check it out. If it's a female, it may be carrying her hatchlings on her back. Now, imagine it's the middle of spring and you're walking among blooming flowers and greenery. Suddenly, you spot something extremely bizarre on the ground. The animal looks cute, fluffy, and soft-looking. The desire to touch it is irresistible. Watch out! The sting of the hairy caterpillar can pack a serious punch. This one is called the puss moth caterpillar, or asp. There are several stinging caterpillar species in Texas: the buck moth caterpillar, spiny oak slug caterpillar, saddleback caterpillar, and eel moth caterpillar. And touching any of them can lead to unpleasant consequences. If you had touched that pretty hairy thing in the park, you'd most likely start feeling a burning sensation and develop an itchy rash. In the worst-case scenario, you'd even have to go to the emergency room. The main problem is that people react very differently to caterpillar toxins. Some may develop more severe reactions than others. Plus, how bad the consequences are also depends on the thickness of the skin in the affected area. In most cases, the unpleasant sensation and rash go away in a few hours or sometimes days. On the bright side, such caterpillars later turn into moths and butterflies that help pollinate flowers and trees. Getting rid of these critters means doing a massive disservice to the area where you live. Specialists are sure that coming across a stinging caterpillar won't lead to anything bad if you keep in mind the rule of thumb. If a caterpillar looks fuzzy, don't touch it. And the best solution to dealing with such creatures is educating people on what such caterpillars are, what they look like, and why it's dangerous to touch them with unprotected hands.
Living at depths of up to 5,000 feet, the hagfish is one of the strangest creatures in the ocean. And there's plenty on the list. The goblin shark, sea spiders, red-lipped batfish, and even people swimming during winter. It's freezing, man! Get out! Although it looks like an eel, this fish belongs to the Agnatha species. That's fish without jaws, and the family also includes lampreys, terrifying monsters with disc-shaped suction cup mouths filled with spiraling rows of teeth. Hagfish have 2 tongues, 4 hearts, and no eyes or stomach, like something from another planet. And what sets them apart from anything on this planet is that they have a skull but no spine. They don't have bones either. That unique spineless skull is made entirely out of cartilage, the same stuff in your ears and nose. That's right. Scaleless with skin that seems to fit over them like an oversized holiday sweater. It'd be a mistake to think this frail little creature would be an easy dinner. They've evolved to escape from other fish like Houdinis of the deep. And the trick is slime. Lots of it. When something tries to gobble them up or gets just too close for comfort, hagfish release a protein from the holes lining their sides. When this stuff meets the surrounding water, it balloons dramatically, as in 10,000 times. The more water touches it, the bigger this goo ball gets. A teaspoon of hagfish slime can turn into a bucketful in a second. It instantly clogs the gills of any fish trying to chomp down on our slimy friend, even sharks. But hagfish have gills too. So why doesn't the slime block their own? Easy peasy. This hagfish will simply tie itself into a knot and scrape the slime off its body. Doesn't mean their slime comes without inconveniences. Sometimes it gets in the hagfish's tiny nose. To get rid of it, they make themselves sneeze, sort of. Gesundheit. This fish's homemade goo is made of flexible strands that are surprisingly strong, as in stronger than nylon. Imagine falling into a pool of the stuff. You'd struggle to move your arms and legs to swim. It might feel like rubber bands tying you up. But you'd be perfectly safe as long as the stuff doesn't get in your nose or throat. In that case, you'd be as unfortunate as those gilled creatures trying to bite into the slimy fish. And hey, our own species is eyeballing it for loads of potential uses, from parachutes to cars and even clothing. Forget about diving in a pool of this goo. You could be wearing a slime suit in the future. But when it comes to landish creatures, the platypus is just as weird. This mammal has a duck bill, a beaver tail, webbed feet, and lays eggs. Like a lot of fish, the platypus and its relative, the echidna, have no stomach, but they don't need one. They store their food in their cheeks until they surface. Once they've eaten, the food goes straight to their gut. Just when the platypus couldn't get any stranger, they also sweat milk for their platypups. When winter has put bears, bats, snakes, and even myself into hibernation, there's one animal that does things a little differently. During the cold season, the wood frog lets itself freeze, sometimes for up to 7 months. Like a brown popsicle, they fill their body with a syrupy, unnatural antifreeze to stop crystals from forming. And when the right time comes, they can just thaw themselves out, even multiple times a season. These frogs will find a nice covered area in the forest and wait until spring comes. Once they're thawed, they'll hop away like nothing happened at all. When your name's the boxer crab, you have to live up to it. Ding ding! Round 1! This little crab is super smart. It has sea anemones living in its claws, and these DIY boxing gloves pack a punch. Carrying around these little tentacled sea creatures helps this tiny crab defend itself against fish and anything bigger than it. When feeling disturbed, the crab starts swinging and its gloves start stinging. The tentacles of sea anemones are covered in stinging cells that help the animal capture its lunch. Yup, that's no plant, it's a hungry beast. It's a win-win relationship. For helping the crab protect itself, the gloves get a fun ride around the ocean floor and free meals. Its other names don't sound as tough, but I assure you, the pom-pom or cheerleader crab looks cute but shouldn't be messed with. If you're afraid of spider webs, this is one to avoid. Darwin's bark spider is an orb weaver type that creates a jaw-droppingly large web for a penny-sized spidey. The silk in its web is 10 times stronger than Kevlar and double the strength of any other spiders on the planet. And the webs themselves can be as big as a king-size bed. Not that you'd want to sleep in one. Their web bridges are even more impressive. They can be over 80 feet long. The spiders build them across rivers to catch bugs flying over the water, or you rafting down the rapids. Watch out! And here I thought I spent too much time on the web. Gone to the beach on a hot sunny day when you realize you're out of sunblock. Hey, just do what hippos do. When they sweat, they create their own sunscreen. Living in the water for most of its life, a hippo's skin must stay wet to keep hydrated. When they do have to venture out of the water, something strange happens. The red or pink color we sometimes see on hippos are little beads of fluid that absorb the sun's UV and protect the skin from burning. They're also highly acidic to help stop bacteria growing on the skin. Hippos might look big and clumsy, but they could easily outrun and outswim the best Olympic athletes out there. Must be why the ancient Greeks called them hippopotamus, the river horse. Now, when you're a plant, it's hard to defend yourself, but not for the acacia tree. It has built-in bodyguards, ants. When a few of the leaves are getting nibbled on, the vibrations alert the ant brigade to head out and stop the trespasser. Living in the hollow thorns of the branches, the acacia ants come out and shock the hungry animal with their wasp-like stinger. The tree is so grateful to the ants that it feeds them yummy nectar. Not only do the ants stop animals from grazing too much, they also help improve the tree's health by reducing the bacteria that would be on the leaves. Now, never heard of a sea squirt? I don't recommend getting too close unless you want water in your face. The sea squirt may look like an underwater plant, but it's an animal more closely related to us than a cockroach. These squishy little creatures are in an umbrella category with vertebrates, like you, me, and anyone or anything else with a fancy backbone. That big happy family is called the chordates. Starting as little tadpole-like larvae, sea squirts wiggle around in the ocean for a short time until they find a nice bit of water to call their own. Since they're unable to feed themselves, drastic measures must be taken, and I mean drastic. Like oysters, barnacles, and mussels, the sea squirt has a glue-like substance that cements it to the first place it lands. Once they've picked their forever home, they need to start eating. The first thing to go is their own tail. Then they absorb their gills and even their brain. No longer need the ability to navigate the ocean, it's become unnecessary. They're not heartless though. The sea squirt's ticker is very similar to a human's. It even looks a little like ours. Now here's one you won't forget. Lobsters, crayfish, and crabs have teeth in their stomachs. After they gulp something down, the food in their stomach gets ground up by large teeth. This is called gastric milling, and it helps the crustaceans digest it easier. One species of crab had to take it a step further, of course. The ghost crab uses these teeth not only for eating, but also to growl. By grinding their tummy teeth when scared or struggling with another crab, they're warning to get away. Well, when you don't have vocal cords, stomach growling will have to do. They're also the fastest type of crab on the planet. They can move 100 body lengths per second. That'd be like you running 1.5 football fields in the blink of an eye. Whoa, look at that! Okay, let's face it, we humans are pretty ordinary. I mean, we're no superheroes with superpowers, right? What, you didn't get the memo? But the animal world has a bunch of superheroes. Some creatures live forever, and those who seem to not care about the laws of gravity. Critters that are immune to venom, and those that can run on water. And some of them will send shivers down your spine. So the first superpower on the list is the ability to live without water. Kangaroo rats can get by without water for years. They actually don't mind living without any water. Humans, on the other hand, can only survive 3 days without water. Humans 0, kangaroo rats 1. These little buddies live in extremely arid desert areas and have to get water from the seeds and plants they eat. And although it may sound a bit disturbing, kangaroo rats also know how to extract water from their urine before they set off on a bathroom trip. This way, they don't waste a single drop of precious moisture. Well, that would come in handy at sporting events. Now let me introduce you to the Peter Parker of the animal world. Yep, seems like Spider-Man is real, but not human. Meet a gecko lizard, or simply gecko. This critter has a marvelous ability to climb up all kinds of vertical surfaces and can even go for a walk on the ceiling. This gravity-defying feat is possible thanks to the lizard's unique foot pads covered with tiny hairs. They can cling to almost any kind of surface, no matter whether it's smooth, hard, rough, or soft. One more fun fact about these guys is that they lack eyelids, so they always keep an eye wide open for what's going on around them. If you wonder how they keep their eyes protected, here's the answer. Their eyes are covered with a transparent membrane, the cornea. Sure thing, they can't close their eyes, and if they have something in their eye, they simply lick it off. Right, they clean their eyeballs by licking them. I guess that's another superpower. Any supersonic superpowers here? Sure. A 1-inch long subtropical shrimp disorients its prey with a sonic boom. Despite its modest size, the pistol shrimp is one of the loudest marine animals. When the shrimp snaps its claws, it creates a sound as loud as a sonic boom. Naturally, this sound stuns the prey, and the shrimp can catch it without too much effort. Now, in the comic world, there's Venom. In the animal world, there's a guy that can be called anti-venom. Opossums are known for their handy trick of pretending to have passed away when a predator attacks them. But that's not the end of the story. These guys are also immune to rattlesnake and pit viper venom. The secret is a peptide that helps opossums neutralize dangerous chemicals. This is the reason why snakes are a favorite treat on opossums' diet. There's one curious thing they have on their diet: ticks. One opossum can hoover up about 5,000 ticks per season, and most of them are picked off their own bodies. Now, imagine a fish that is so notorious that it's called a dangerous fish. It's mabenga, and it literally translates to dangerous fish in Swahili. This monster lives in freshwater and doesn't mind having a crocodile for lunch. Not a whole crocodile, but mabenga can take a bite out of them. But to be honest, these guys are intimidated by the crocodiles, the same way the crocs are intimidated by them. Now, you're watching this video on some gadget, right? Well, we all owe the gadgets we have to the electric eels in some way. I mean, all gadgets have batteries, and eels contributed a lot to the invention of an electric battery back in 1800. I know, the batteries have unrecognizably changed since then, but still, the first electric battery ever was invented thanks to electric eels. Anyway, if you see one of them and want to thank them for their magnificent invention, don't do that. Thing is, they can deliver shocks up to 860 volts. You don't want to experience that. Now let's talk about the Count Dracula of the animal kingdom. Nope, I'm not talking about bats. I'm talking about the fanged vampire fish. These fish are known as payara and have two long fangs protruding from their lower jaw. Here's why some people associate them with vampires. Hippos are the beauty gurus, since they know how to save a fortune on skincare. Living under the harsh African sun, these animals secrete a sweat-like red oily substance that evaporates and keeps the animals' bodies cool. Besides, the fluid works as a moisturizer, sunscreen, and antibiotic all in one. But they're not the only ones with such a superpower. Mantis shrimp know how to produce natural sunscreen too, but they use it for eye protection. It's all about amino acid pigments, and these pigments act as special filters that contribute to their sharp vision too. That's what I call multitasking. Meerkats have dark patches around their eyes which makes them look even cuter. But these black circles aren't there just to make these buddies more adorable. They also function as built-in sunglasses. The dark fur on the patches blocks the blazing sun, and as a result, meerkats can gaze directly at the sky. On top of that, the sentry, a meerkat that watches out for birds and other predators, can easily see danger coming and alert its mates. Wild goats are famous for their climbing skills, but the alpine ibex from northern Italy is the champion. This critter can climb nearly any vertical surface, defying several physical laws in the process. Interestingly, the animals that do walk on the steepest cliff walls are typically mother goats with their little ones. Large males prefer to keep their distance and use flat horizontal surfaces. Smart guys. Some animals protect themselves with venom or nasty bites, while others use chemical tricks for protection. Listen to this. Some species of millipedes produce hydrogen cyanide and exude it when they feel threatened. Hydrogen cyanide is odorless but highly toxic. One little millipede can't seriously hurt you, but you may have burns or even blisters if your skin is sensitive. Plus, to make the picture even scarier, some millipedes glow in the dark. So watch out, and if you see a crawling spot of light at night, run away as fast as you can. When the bombardier beetle feels threatened, it sprays scorching liquid from the tip of its abdomen with a loud popping sound. As soon as the beetle senses danger, a chemical reaction starts in special reservoirs in its abdomen. The heat from this process nearly reaches the boiling point and also produces special gas that triggers the ejection. This super protection is usually fatal for the attacking insects. I guess so. Plumed basilisk lizards have an uncanny ability to run on water. First of all, their hind feet are equipped with long toes which have fringes of skin that can spread out in the water. As a result, a bigger surface of the lizard's foot comes into contact with water. Then, when it runs on water, it pumps its legs incredibly fast. This creates little pockets of air that prevent the animal from drowning by keeping it on the surface. Now, fleas can be annoying, but it doesn't make them any less amazing. These tiny critters can leap about 50 times their body length. If people could do the same, we would be jumping about 1/4 mile into the air. Well, let's try it. The most curious thing about fleas' astonishing ability is that they take most of the power for leaps from their toes, not knees. So, what's your favorite animal superpower? I vote for the kangaroo rat. I don't like standing in lines for the bathroom.
You travel along the coast of the North Atlantic. In your Jeep, you're driving through the jungles and plains, taking amazing pictures of wildlife for your blog. And then, you accidentally come upon a place that isn't marked on any map. It's a bay with an azure coast. No human has ever set foot here. You've discovered a huge footprint of an unknown creature on the sandy beach. The size of the print is more than half of your vehicle. Suddenly, out of the tropical forest that borders with the beach, you hear a deafening roar. Palm trees crack and break as an unknown monster comes out of the jungle. To understand what it is, let's go back to the past. Hundreds of millions of years ago, shortly before the huge meteorite hit the Earth, a group of tyrannosaurs migrated to the coast of the North Atlantic. There, they got to a huge bay facing the ocean. For a long time, thanks to the natural protection of this place, they were safe from all natural disasters that had been occurring to the Earth at that time. The fall of a meteorite, the Ice Age, and earthquakes didn't bother the T-Rexes much. But they weren't the only monsters in this place. A group of megalodons swam to the bay for safety too. The most ferocious creatures of the oceans and of land were forced to live in one place. For millions of years, these monsters cooked in a huge cauldron called evolution. As a result, a new creature of destructive power appeared. The new hybrid beast has the very best of two ancient titans. Tyrannosaurus rex. With a length of 40 feet and weighing about 9 tons, it's roughly the size of a school bus. The king of dinosaurs had thick and strong neck muscles that could hold a large skull and jaws filled with 60 sharp teeth. And the thick tail of the T-Rex helped to balance the body. The bite force of the giant dino reached 12,800 pounds, which is as if an adult elephant sat on you. Strong enough, but it's nothing compared to the strength and size of the megalodon. The shark reached 50 feet in length, slightly less than a subway car, and weighed 75 tons, which is more than a tank. This is almost 8 times heavier than a T-Rex. The megalodon's jaws were filled with 300 sharp teeth, each the size of an adult human palm. And the bite force of a megalodon is 6 times stronger than the T-Rex's. And here, these two beasts become one, inheriting strong megalodon jaws, 360 teeth, and a massive Tyrannosaurus skull. The hybrid monster moves on 2 legs, but has fins on its back and the tip of its tail, as well as webbed toes. Its length from the tail to the skull is 70 feet, and its weight is about 90 tons. This is the largest creature in the entire history of the planet. After a blue whale, of course. Since it survived all natural disasters and had no competitors in the food chain, it's been able to live to this day. And here you see the Megalodon Rex, or Tyrannolodon, however you want. Its roar deafens you. The monster is coming at you. Every step feels like a little earthquake. You press the gas pedal, but the car doesn't go. The wheels are stuck in the sand. There's no choice. You leave the car and take an inflatable boat with a small motor from the trunk. At this moment, the Tyrannolodon grabs the Jeep with its jaws and crushes it like a cardboard box. The pressure, comparable to the weight of 6 adult elephants, is now being applied to your Jeep. The monster chews it like so much chewing gum. You can hear its sharp teeth cutting through the metal and rubber on the wheels. And then, the dinosaur spits the car out. Meanwhile, you run to the water, start the engine, and sail away on the boat as far as possible. The dinosaur runs after you and jumps into the ocean. It swims like a shark. You can see a fin sticking out of the water, the size of a small sailing boat. Fortunately, the monster isn't able to catch up with you. The megalodon's speed is about 10 miles per hour, but now it slows down almost twice as much because it has massive hind legs. The webbing on the legs helps to swim, but it's still a big weight. The physical form of the dinosaur doesn't allow it to accelerate too much. 8 miles per hour is its maximum. The fin is moving further and further away from you, but at this moment, the engine starts to rattle. Oh no! You remember you didn't fill the tank with fuel! This means that in a couple of minutes, you will be left alone with a huge predator. It won't see you since you've sailed far away, but the shark part of our monster has a great sense of smell in the water. You won't be able to escape its nose. You turn the boat and head for the shore. In the distance, the triangular fin is swimming around. You give it a wide berth to avoid being caught by Tyrannolodon. But you don't have enough gas. The engine shuts off. You start rowing with an oar, but now you're moving too slow. The monster is inevitably catching up with you. A huge dinosaur emerges from the water and falls back, creating a huge wave. It throws you to the shore along with the boat. The monster comes out of the water and runs after you. You have a chance to save yourself because the speed of the Tyrannolodon is about 10 miles per hour, which is slightly slower than the speed of the T-Rex. You run and easily find a shelter. But you realize in time, this is a bad tactic. since the T-Rex part of the monster has well-developed smell receptors. It can sniff you out as well as a domestic cat. You just need to run as far as possible from this beast. You can hear the deafening roar of the Megalodon Rex behind you. Trees are breaking, the ground is shaking, but then it's suddenly all quiet. The Pteranodon's heart does hard work when it pumps blood through the huge dinosaur's body. When it runs, the heart works even more intensively. Because of this load, the dinosaur has little endurance. It quickly runs out of energy. Perhaps it's sitting on the ground right now and catching its breath. Tired, you also stop. You can't hear the dinosaur's footsteps. The T-Rex couldn't hunt small dinosaurs, as they easily ran away from it, and its approach was heard from afar. Only big plant-eating dinosaurs, as slow as itself, could become its dinner. It's the 21st century now, and the dinosaurs are extinct. So what does this monster eat? At this moment, you can hear the trees crunching a few feet away from you. Through the bushes and leaves, you can see a large triangular plate. You run to the side and realize that this is a real stegosaurus. It seems the Jurassic period is still preserved on this piece of land. The herbivorous dinosaur, the size of a bus, calmly eats grass and makes noise. On the other side, you hear the heavy footsteps of the hungry Pteranodon. The Stegosaurus senses the upcoming enemy. It gets into a fighting position. Pteranodon is approaching. You run back to a safe place and watch the fight. Pteranodon runs out of the jungle. It growls, opens its massive jaw, and attacks the herbivore. The Stegosaurus quickly hits the enemy with its barbed tail. The Pteranodon falls to the side. Trees shatter into splinters, and the ground shakes under the huge monster. It gets up and furiously runs at the opponent. You decide to run away to buy yourself some time. You come to the shore, jump on the boat, and row as far as possible from the bay. The roars of two giant dinosaurs come from the jungle. You decide to sail along the bay and get to the beach with civilization. While you're sailing, you notice that it's suddenly become quiet. Too quiet. Waves appear on the surface, but there's no wind. The water bubbles, and you hear a terrible hum from the ocean depths. Through the blue surface, you can see several tentacles. They're huge, and they're on your every side. This must be a huge squid, or even a kraken. But then, you see the head of this monster is a shark's one. Now you definitely can't escape, because the Crackalodon swims out of the water. But this is a completely different story.
You're sitting in a soft chair at home and watching TV. Click, another reality show. Click, an action movie you've seen so many times. Click, a nature documentary. Boring. Click, click, click. The remote stopped working. Great. You open the back lid to change the batteries, and a random thought occurs to you. How did they come up with these batteries, you think? With the help of the fish, a voice from the TV answers you. You look at the screen. The host of the wildlife show talks about electric eels, how they generate electricity, why they don't hurt themselves with it, and how they help to create batteries. Okay, they got your attention. Make yourself comfortable and enjoy. We fly to South America. Here our exciting adventure through the tropical jungle begins. We need to go along the Amazon and find a small pond or stream that branches from the river. This is where our shocking little heroes live. You pull a fishing rod out of your backpack and throw the line into the water. Very soon, the fish should take the bait. By the way, an electric eel is not an eel at all. It's a fish, and it's closer to the carp or catfish family. The line is wiggling. You pull the rod but realize you're not strong enough, because an electric eel is a really big creature. Its length can exceed 8 feet. That's more than the average height of a professional basketball player. And it weighs about 44 pounds. Size isn't the only thing that's scary about it. The electric eel is able to shock you really bad. An electric eel can't breathe in water like fish do. It needs to come up to the surface and breathe the air above. Besides, they jump out of the water to attack predators. This is their way of protecting themselves. The eel's electric power can reach more than 600 volts. This burst of energy is enough to knock an adult horse off its feet. That's why you need fake bait to make the eel deplete all its energy. You were prepared for this and took a life-size inflatable alligator doll with you. You throw it close to the fish, the eel attacks it several times. Now you have time before the fish recharges itself. You put the eel in a glass tank filled with water and carefully study it. Previously, when people discovered this fish for the first time, they placed it in an aquarium and transported it around the world. In Europe, the eel was shown at exhibitions, and people considered it a real monster. But thanks to science, we now know how this fish generates electricity. The eel's body contains electrical organs. There are thousands of disc-shaped cells called electrocytes all over its body. When the eel wants to fight off an enemy or attack its prey, its brain sends a signal that passes through the whole nervous system and gets into the electrical organ. Electrocytes are instantly charged with electricity and release it. Individually, these cells are weak, but what's peculiar about this organ is that it provides a charge to all cells at the same time. They create an electric field around the eel, which scatters in different directions and stuns all living things nearby. In 1800, the way eels accumulate electricity inside them inspired an Italian physicist, Alessandro Volta, and helped him create the world's first battery. At the time, he called his invention a voltaic pile, and the unit of measurement of electric potential was named after the scientist himself, the Alessandro. Wait a minute, no, volt, that's it. Anyway, still Volta couldn't understand why the electric field didn't touch the eel itself. More than 200 years later have passed since then, and science still can't explain this phenomenon. It's possible the charge is released very quickly and doesn't have time to touch the eel. Also, there's a theory that during the strike, eels bend their body in a certain position that allows them to avoid getting struck. But there are cases when eels accidentally hurt themselves. Electrical shock is not the only superpower this fish has. It can create a very weak electric field to detect its prey. Almost every animal on the planet has electroreceptors. Thanks to them, they can feel barely perceptible electrical signals. Thus, the eel, like a sonar, locates its prey. After that, it releases a stronger charge to immobilize its target before attacking. There are about 350 species of fish that can generate electrical discharges, but the most powerful is the eel. Some creatures, such as the elephant fish, use this ability to detect predators and hide from them. The charge in their organs is not enough to attack, but still sufficient to recharge a small battery by 2/3. One of the weirdest fish releasing an electric discharge is the stargazer fish. To see it, we need to dive to the bottom of the ocean. Now, look very carefully. Among the ocean sand and rocks, you can distinguish the faint outlines of big eyes and a creepy mouth. Now, that's not me. The face looks like an imprint of some sinister creature, but it's the real face of a stargazer. The fish merges with the seafloor to catch prey. It has eyes, nostrils, and mouth on the top of its face, all in the same place. It buries itself in the sand, opens its mouth, and waits for little fish to swim by. Organs that produce electricity are behind the stargazer's eyes. The fish uses them to protect itself from predators. The shock confuses the enemies, and the stargazer has time to swim away. And not only sea dwellers can generate electricity. Let's go to lush green meadows to see them. Bees fly and work hard here. These creatures flap their wings so fast that they generate an electrical pulse. Look how a bee flies up to a flower, pollinates it, and leaves a faint electric trace on it. If another bee gets to this flower, it will notice the electric mark, understand that this flower has been harvested already, and try another one. In the jungles of Madagascar, Africa, and Australia, you can meet the gecko, one of the most tenacious lizards in the world, which can climb on any surface. If we look closely at the structure of their feet, we'll see hundreds of tiny bristles on them. These bristles are divided into hundreds of smaller bristles, and these microscopic hairs cling to any surface so close that its molecules mingle with the gecko's and create an electromagnetic charge. Some spiders can even fly using the Earth's electric field. During and after a thunderstorm, charged electric particles appear in the sky. Spiders climb a tree or a tall blade of grass and release their webs. The silk gets electrified and raises, and the spider gets thousands of miles away and rises to the heights where passenger airplanes fly. Besides, spiders use electricity to catch prey. They cover their web with a special glue with electrostatic properties. This glue is immediately attracted to any objects that fly in the air. Thanks to this ability, the prey is very easily entangled and gets stuck inside the silk. The oriental hornet has pigments that work just like solar panels do. The hornet absorbs the sun's rays and converts them into energy. Almost all living creatures have an electrical potential. You, watching this video, holding a cup of tea in your hands, or talking to someone. This all happens because your brain sends a signal to your nervous system. And this signal is electrical. You go to the gym, lift heavy dumbbells, squat with a barbell, and all your muscles are contracted with the help of an electric charge. This energy is present in almost all cells. The only question is why some animals have a stronger charge, while others have a weaker one. Evolution is the answer. In the water, where visibility and audibility are bad, and where it's impossible to hide from predators or find prey, living creatures received electrosites for navigation, protection, and communication. Wow, wasn't that information shocking?
Poison dart frogs are one of the most toxic species on our planet. They come in a range of bright colors: blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. And that's not just to show off. It's a kind of message to all the predators that might want to come after them. I'm toxic, so you better stay away and don't try to eat me. The golden poison dart frog, for example, has so much poison it could finish 20,000 mice. Vibrant colors in nature are generally a sign it's better to stay away from that animal, because it's a warning you're looking at something you definitely don't want to eat. Check a blue ring octopus, another extremely venomous creature. Unlike poison dart frogs or, for example, velvet ants, whose bright colors you see right away, this octopus shows its blue rings only when it feels threatened. With over 300 pounds and 10 feet in length, Komodo dragons are the heaviest lizards on our planet. They will go after almost anything that comes their way, including pigs, deer, smaller dragons, and even more challenging creatures, like big water buffalo. They camouflage and patiently wait for their prey to come closer, lying in the grass. Saltwater crocodiles. Their attacks are more frequent than those of sharks. They have a 3.5 times stronger bite than a lion and 25 times stronger bite than people do. One more superpower: these guys can literally launch their bodies out of water, and they do that with their tails. Hippos seem quite relaxed as they chill in the water, but they're actually pretty aggressive. They attack humans even more than leopards and lions. This guy is small, but it can be as threatening as a huge hippo. Meet the tsetse fly. It lives in sub-Saharan Africa, and travelers that love spending their time outdoors or in game parks should be careful about these insects. It's important to get the right treatment as soon as possible if it bites you. Pus caterpillars look all innocent and fluffy, but you'd better avoid touching them. They're venomous, and these wig-like hairs you see are actually spines that can cause multiple issues if you touch them. Ouch! Vespa mandarinia mostly build their nests underground, so it's trickier to find them. Their sting is like someone pierced you with a hot metal pin. The stinger is long enough to even go through the standard protective beekeeper's gear. The reef stonefish is the world's most venomous fish. There are 13 stout spines in its dorsal fin, and that's how this animal injects its highly toxic venom. Lions. They live mostly in Africa and can eat a quarter of their body weight, about 88 pounds, in a single meal. They mostly hunt at night and during storms because the wind and noise make it harder for their prey to hear and see them. Why hunt if they can just go and participate in some burger eating contest? Tigers mostly inhabit Asia. They're able to survive in different conditions since you can find them in various areas, from mountains to rainforests. As long as they have enough water, food, and cover, they can adapt to anything. Food can sometimes be a problem since they eat up to 60 big animals per year, with smaller ones as snacks in between. Fun fact, their skin is covered in stripes too, not just their fur. A bit of good news here. Wolves aren't really into eating humans. Still, sometimes they do go after people. They mostly attack when they don't have enough food or when they lose their habitat. Sharks have a bad reputation, but they mostly spend their time away from humans, catching smaller fish and other marine animals. Still, they'll defend themselves if you come to their area and they feel threatened. And in that case, their serrated teeth certainly don't look too peaceful. Ostrich may not belong to that list at first sight, but when it's cornered, this animal is perfectly capable of taking down big predators such as wolves and lions. Yeah, sometimes they can be brave, and in reality, they never stick their head in the sand when frightened. We can't forget to mention brown or grizzly bears, which are considered to be way more aggressive than other bears. It's 3.5 times more likely something bad will happen if you encounter them than polar bears. They're also 21 times more dangerous than black bears. And yet, brown bears are the most widespread kind of bears across the globe. When it comes to snakes, saw-scaled viper is definitely one of those you need to be careful with the most, because the consequences of its bite are statistically quite sad to say the least. It has enough venom that even its weakest bite could finish 2 people. Not just saw-scaled viper, there are multiple snakes you need to stay away from. Meet Philippine cobra. It lurks in forested areas, dense jungles, low-lying plains, and open fields. It especially likes areas near water and can spit its venom up to 9.8 feet away. Black mamba too, very venomous, kinda nervous, and when it sees you as a threat, extremely aggressive. It's among the world's fastest snakes, since it can move at speeds of up to 12.5 miles per hour. Australian box jellyfish is the most venomous marine animal in the world. It has tentacles covered in small darts with venom, and they can grow up to 10 feet long. Seeing even a small random spider in your home can be unpleasant, and picture if it was a Goliath bird eater instead, the largest spider in the world, and also one of the creepiest. You'll mostly find them spending their time in burrows with the entrances covered with the web. Luckily, their venom is not that bad to humans. It's like a wasp stinging you. Bad news for insects, you guys should be careful. This spider is a real danger for you. Platypus looks cute and harmless, but despite their funny appearance, they're one of the most dangerous animals in Australia. They have spurs located on their hind legs, and each of them is connected to a crural gland by a duct. And this gland creates a complex mixture of hundreds of toxins. Ugh! They have 2 layers of fur for waterproofing and insulation. With their fur, platypuses trap a layer of air right next to their skin so they can remain dry when they're underwater looking for food, which is about 12 hours a day. One of the stings you'll definitely feel the most is from the bullet ant. They're small, and their stinger is only up to 0.11 inches long, but it can still leave you with several hours of burning sensation. Pufferfish are poor swimmers, so they're most likely to end up as lunch for larger fish. But when they sense danger, they ingest big amounts of water together with air, so their body inflates like a balloon. They can puff up to even 2 to 3 times their regular size. A single pufferfish has enough toxin to finish 30 humans. The African buffalo is the only species of wild cow you'll find in Africa. You can recognize it for its heavy, rigid horns, and this, in combination with its massive size and aggressive nature, makes them very dangerous for whoever stands in its way. Elephants will respect your space most of the time, but only if you respect theirs. They can feel threatened by, let's say, a group of tourists that come too close and disrupt their personal space. In that case, they'll defend themselves and be very angry, which isn't such a nice scene. Wild dogs can be pretty dangerous, like dingoes in Australia. They can either live alone or move in packs of up to 10 animals, which can be especially tricky for their prey when the entire pack is after it. They can cross great distances and communicate with each other, howling like wolves. A star-nosed mole is certainly one of the weirdest looking creatures you'll come across. In some way, it looks like someone replaced its head with a very small octopus. They're not dangerous to humans in the way some venomous creatures or large predators are, but they can cause a lot of damage in your garden.
So, we all know that Mother Nature is wise. If she blesses some creature with a particular body part, it should make perfect sense, right? Well, yeah, but still, some wildlife shots make you wonder if evolution has gone the wrong way. Snakes' natural design allows them to swallow a whole mouse. But in some cases, this cool ability can turn against them. Yes, snakes can actually swallow themselves. Scientists believe that they mostly do this because of stress, captivity, temperature regulation, hunger, or illness. The snake is pretty helpless in this situation, you can tell. If it doesn't get help in time, digestive juices may begin to corrode the swallowed tail. So if you ever catch your pet snake doing this, try to stop it, or take it to the vet. Okay, but what about the fangs, I hear you ask? Does a venomous snake have immunity to its own venom? Well, if the snake digests it, it will be okay. It's because protein is a primary component in venom. And besides, the venom is excreted by the gland in the snake's mouth. So no matter whom the snake bites, chances are that it's going to drink a bit. So the only way a snake can actually suffer from its own venom is by biting itself straight into the blood vessel. In this case, it'll experience the same reaction as any other animal. Now, think you're having a bad hair day? Hey, check this guy out. Chris was an Australian merino ram who became a celebrity in 2015 after being discovered in the wild. Farmers shorn him and gained nearly 90 pounds of wool. When the animal was found, he carried over 5 years' worth of fleece on his body. But Chris belonged to the domestic sheep breed that needs to be shorn regularly. Otherwise, the animal is at great risk of injury and infection. So the lives of these cuties depend directly on going to the hairdresser. Shall we talk about horns? Cattle, goats, and many other species proudly wear this fancy headdress not only for fashion, but also as a weapon for brutal battles. If you ask this bighorn sheep ram directly how old he is, you'll probably hear something like, "Bah." But if you want to get a more precise answer, you can count the number of rings on his horns. The biggest and the darkest ring usually marks the 4th birthday, when the ram matures enough for mating. Although animal horns may look very tough, in fact, most of them are made of keratin. It's the same protein that builds human hair and nails. Horns never stop growing as the animal ages, just like our own hair. And eventually, they can curl into really extravagant shapes, making these weapons turn against their owners. This is what a Wiltshire sheep horn looks like when it's young. But as the years go by, the horns typically curl in front of its face. And while most grow out harmlessly, the inward-growing horns can end up dangerously close to the sheep's head. Like this ram who's having bad luck, to say the least. Its horn has slowly grown into its own skull, and eventually, well, it didn't end well for the sheep. Of course, this would hardly have happened on a farm, because people would have made a preventive horn cut. But unfortunately, in the wild, animals cannot use hairdresser services. That's why they use rocks and branches to rub and grind away at their horns to keep them safe, just like humans trim their nails. Faulty genetics is not the only reason for the horn distortion. You see, when males of this species want to fight for dominance, they begin to butt heads to show each other who's the alpha male here. These battles can break horn plates, making them grow at weird and dangerous angles. The fancier the original shape of the horns is, the more problems their fracture may cause. This poor African kudu is a bright example. Fortunately, in some cases, unlimited body part growth can be good for the animal. Just take a look at these adorable smiles. If you happen to break off your own molar tooth, your dentist would probably say it's irreversible and offer a replacement. But if an alpaca breaks its front teeth, all it has to do is wait a bit. Although these animals don't have upper teeth, their lower teeth constantly grow throughout their lifetime, and they might look pretty creepy when they get too long. That's why some farmers prefer trimming them from time to time, just like pet owners cut the nails of their cats or dogs. Now, llamas look so similar to alpacas that many people confuse these two species. But the significant difference between them is that llamas' front teeth are encased in enamel. That's why, unlike alpacas, they don't possess the superpower of limited growth. Too bad. Unlike the keratin horns, deer antlers are made entirely of bone. Typically, only male deers, called stags, grow antlers. Very rarely, females can grow them too due to a serious hormone imbalance. This is a deer equivalent of a beard on a human female. that sometimes can appear due to various diseases. Adult deers grow and shed their antlers annually, which coincides with the breeding season. At first, their antlers are covered in velvet, a protective skin with blood vessels. But once the antler is fully developed, the deer gets rid of the velvet, just like snakes shed their skin. Although this process doesn't harm the deer, it may look pretty spooky. Once the brand new antlers are ready, stags begin to fight with other males over the lady's attention. Usually stags barely eat or sleep during this competition. And if you ever question whether the antlers of two deers can get locked together, the answer is yes. Every stag is risking ending up stuck with his own rival instead of having a romantic night out with a female deer. Bummer. Moreover, all the traumas that the deer gets during the mating season can influence further antler growth if specific nerves get damaged. Just like horns, antlers can develop at distorted angles because of genetic failures. Some mutations can even make them grow monstrously large. This unlucky deer can barely move his head without losing balance. Also, if a deer breaks one of its legs, its body can speed up the healing by sacrificing the bone and blood material from one of the antlers, and thus this antler will get thinner and weaker. And speaking of facial extensions, we cannot skip the tusks. Please meet Babirusa from Indonesia. This ancient boar first emerged over 35,000 years ago. It's easy to confuse these big tusks with horns, but they are actually upper canines. They tend to pierce through the skin of the boar's face as it matures. Scientists believe that these intimidating tusks have evolved as a tool to protect eyes and throat while fighting with other males during mating season. But this design doesn't seem very thoughtful. If a male boar doesn't grind his tusks regularly, they can end up curling back into his own skull, which can blind him or even worse. Now, what if I told you that hoofs can grow out of control just like horns and antlers? It took evolution millions of years to turn the middle toe of the animal's foot bone into the hoof. And just like toenails, they tend to grow and curl into creepy shapes if they aren't cut regularly. When donkeys or horses don't have a chance to wear down their hoofs naturally by walking on hard surfaces, they tend to overgrow. This makes the animals walk on the balls of their feet and overstretch the tendons, which may result in pain and bone loss. And eventually, they can lose the ability to walk at all. So if you ever come across a horse with curly hooves, consider calling the experts to give it an emergency manicure. Perhaps one of the most obvious questions regarding the undersea world is, can a fish drown in the water? Yup, it can. Although gills are an amazing gift of nature, there are still many factors that may deprive a fish of healthy breathing. When the oxygen level in the water is too low, fish begin to suffocate. But it happens very rarely in the wild. Oxygen deficit usually appears in aquariums that are not washed and replenished often enough. Also, parasites, diseases, and an overall imbalance in water components can cause the fish to drown. And on that note, I need to hoof it on out of here. See you next time. Now, if Earth's history were a movie, we humans would only take up the last second of the end credits. Our planet has been around for about 4.6 billion years, but our human story began about 300,000 years ago in Africa. Now our ancestors had some wild adventures in nature. They could have run into creatures so big they'd make today's elephants look like puppies. The woolly mammoth is a pretty famous animal, sure. His cousin, though, the Columbian mammoth, not so much. This giant used to roam places from Canada all the way down to Mexico. Unlike the furrier woolly mammoths, which hung out in colder places, these animals had shorter hair, resembling huge elephants. They also had incredibly large tusks, like 12 feet worth of spiraling sturdy tusks. And they weren't just for show, they came in handy when facing predators. That includes our ancestors. If you think about sloths these days, you're picturing these adorably slow creatures. They couldn't possibly be in your list of most dangerous animals. Well, their grandparents might have. For starters, we call them ground sloths, and they vary a lot in size. Some were as big as rhinos, and others, like the Megatherium, were as colossal as elephants. Imagine seeing a 20-foot-long sloth which doesn't mind chewing on some meat every now and then, at least in theory. Ever heard of Bigfoot? Well, our next animal kind of looks like him, but is a distant cousin to orangutans. Meet Gigantopithecus, the largest primate to ever call our planet its home. Standing tall at 10 feet and weighing more than 600 pounds, these animals were amazing to look at in real life. Unlike Bigfoot, they weren't constantly hiding. In fact, it's believed they were peaceful and gentle creatures. Sadly, they faded away about 100,000 years ago, mainly because their food sources slowly became unavailable. Those lush, fruity forests they called home eventually turned into dry grasslands. Next on our list is the cave hyena. Weighing a chunky 250 pounds and standing 3 feet tall, these beasts were as long as a grown-up lying down. What's even more interesting about these creatures is that they loved hanging out in groups. A pack could be as big as 30 of these animals, which meant they could easily take on even the biggest, heaviest mastodons. Our ancient families would have needed to stay alert around these hungry specimens. Sadly for these hyenas, about 20,000 years ago, their numbers started going down. Soon enough, they completely disappeared from the planet. Quick pop quiz. What's called a tiger but isn't really one? It's the saber-toothed tiger. I mean, sure, they belong to the feline family, but they aren't technically tigers. First appearing around 42 million years ago, in July, I think, many of their kind were gone before we even showed up. However, early Americans might have bumped into a couple of specimens from this group. If that really happened, it would have been quite the encounter. Think of the biggest wild lion today or the hefty Siberian tiger. These big cats also had some incredible features hidden in their fur. They were good at sneaking around, hiding, and pouncing on mammoths bigger than themselves. Their bite wasn't that strong, but they could open their jaws wide, like twice as much as a lion. And although their teeth were a bit on the weak side, they had buff forearms to pin down their dinner, giving those big fangs a purpose. Not the kind of kitty you'd want to play with. Dire wolves made their debut about 250,000 years ago. They were like the gray wolves we know today, but a lot stronger. While wolves these days stretch out to about 6 feet and tip the scales at 170 pounds max, dire wolves were about 5 feet and about 150 pounds. Found all over North and South America, they had admirable jaws, biting nearly a third harder than their modern counterparts. Also, their favorite snack was horses. But just like many other majestic beasts of the past, they faded away around 10,000 years ago. Now, names can be deceiving. Take the American lion, for example. It's not really a lion, it's more of a panther's big cousin. The other part of the name is correct, though. They did live in America about 330,000 years ago. This feline was no lap cat either. They were at the top of the wildcat pyramid, weighing a colossal 772 pounds. That's like stacking 4 grown men on a scale. Even the mighty African lion would look a tad bit shy beside these beasts. With the muscle to take down a bison, you wouldn't want to accidentally interrupt their dinner. They parted ways with this planet around 11,000 years ago, right after the last ice age. Now, down in Australia, about 50,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, there lurked a relative of the Komodo dragon, the Megalania. Experts love to have debates on how big it was. Some say it stretched out to 23 feet. Others think it was just about 11 feet long. Either way, they were basically mega-sized Komodo dragons with a dangerous bite. If you think bears are already big and fluffy now, let's introduce the short-faced bear. While this big creature stood on its hind legs, it towered at 14 feet. With long limbs, they could outrun today's bears, hitting speeds up to 40 miles per hour. These ultra bears sadly disappeared around 11,600 years ago. Now imagine a crocodile. Okay, imagine that same crocodile, only supersized, with sporty legs, doing its thing in Australia about 1.6 million years ago. Well, say hello to the quincana. These crocs were extremely large, reaching 23 feet. And no, they weren't lazy river loungers. These creatures really love spending time on land. They evolved to have strong legs for their chases and razor-sharp teeth designed for slicing, not gripping. When did we stop sharing beaches with them? About 40,000 years ago. The name elephant bird might not sound familiar, but try to picture a bird that stood tall as high as a basketball hoop at 10 feet and weighed as much as a small car, 1,500 pounds. Their eggs were equally huge, like 150 chicken eggs bundled up into one. Now, as amazing as these birds sound, there's a lot we still don't know about them. They're hard to study, as most extinct animals are. Still, some recent studies have given us some clues. Scientists have been examining ancient molecules from their fossilized eggshells. It's an awesome piece of evidence, since these birdie shells were thick, preserving precious DNA inside. Plus, there are tons of these eggshell fragments sprinkled all over Madagascar's beaches. Because of these findings, we now know these birds were herbivores and loved eating leaves and seeds. We also know the tiny kiwi bird is its closest living relative. Now, dodos were these amazing birds we also used to share the planet with. They're like distant cousins to ancient pigeons. To give you some perspective, imagine a chunky bird weighing about 50 pounds. Similar to chickens, turkeys, and ostriches, dodos were also the types of birds that couldn't fly. Their wings were small, and they had the muscle strength of, well, a wet noodle. Now, you might have heard the word dodo used as a name for creatures that aren't that bright. Don't get confused, though, by this name. These birds were, in fact, intelligent. Scientists were able to figure that out by studying their fossils. It turns out that they were good at smelling stuff, unlike most birds that are all about the visuals. These creatures aren't around for us to study anymore, but that might change. One evolutionary biologist is on a mission to fully understand these amazing ancient birds. On that note, she revealed that the dodo's DNA has been completely sequenced. There are even talks about potentially bringing dodos back to life. They would make a nice addition to the lovely beaches of Mauritius, the place they used to call home many, many years ago.
In 1952, an Air Force plane called C-124 Globemaster II crashed into a big mountain while flying from Washington to Alaska. Sadly, everyone on board, 52 people in total, didn't make it. The bad weather at the time made it hard to find the crash site, and even later, any attempts to locate it failed. But in 2012, a helicopter crew doing a training mission spotted the pieces of the crashed plane on a glacier called Colony Glacier in Alaska. They started looking for more pieces and confirmed it was indeed the missing plane. Since then, every summer for about a decade, different military groups have been helping in an operation called Colony Glacier. They've managed to identify 40 out of the 52 people whose lives were lost in the crash. The soldiers taking part in this mission take their promise seriously to never leave a fallen comrade behind. They believe it's their duty to bring back those who didn't make it. Another discovery comes from the Alps. In 1991, some hikers exploring the picturesque Alps stumbled upon a human body. It was half frozen in ice at the top of a mountain pass between Italy and Austria. At first, the local police thought it might be a mountaineering accident. But in a few weeks, archaeologists started claiming that this guy might have lived more than 5,000 years ago. They eventually gave the frozen fellow the nickname Ötzi. He was named after the nearby Ötztal Valley. He's become quite famous as the oldest ice mummy on record. Ötzi's frozen state might not be as unique as we thought, and that's where things get really cool. Archaeologists have another theory. See, at first, everyone was convinced that Ötzi marked the start of a cooler period because he had been frozen in the ice without any interruptions since he had lost his life. Yet, over the past few decades, glaciers and ice patches worldwide have been melting away like ice cream on a hot summer day. Not just Ötzi, but other ancient relics like bodies, hunting gear, horse droppings, and even ancient skis started to appear. So, archaeologists say there are similar sites. They found quite a few, and they all fit perfectly into this growing field of glacial archaeology. It seems like as the world warms up, it will show even more ancient secrets from the deep freeze. Moving on to another amazing discovery. In 2018, William Taylor and Nick Jarman were exploring the snowy slopes of Mongolia's Altai Mountains. They found an ancient treasure trove hidden in the ice. Inside the trove, they found a well-preserved 3,000-year-old arrow shaft adorned with ochre markings. It was in pristine condition, a rarity for organic items that old. They found other items too, like a bronze arrowhead with bits of animal sinew still attached. All of these relics had been untouched for hundreds of years, since they had been locked in the ice. In Mongolia, rising temperatures have melted ice patches that remained frozen for centuries. Similar discoveries have been made in the Yukon, US, Italy, Siberia, and Norway. Thousands of sites have been identified. Yet, scientists are racing against time to document and preserve these artifacts before they're lost forever. The study of these artifacts challenges the definition of these environments as wildernesses and shows how indigenous people coexisted with nature there. Sometimes people find simple items too, as simple as a sandal. This one, discovered on one of central Norway's mountain passes, indicates that people used this route roughly 1,700 years ago. This suggests that there was less snow and ice in that area back then. The sandal, dating back to around 300 BCE, resembles Roman sandals of that era. Again, in Norway, hunters found an iron sword high up on a mountain, more than 5,250 feet above sea level. There's no nearby burial site, and it's puzzling why someone would have a sword in such a remote location. Archaeologists speculate that the owner might have become lost. Then, in 2011, unusual objects resembling giant slingshots began to emerge as the ice melted. Radiocarbon dating suggests that this particular object was crafted around 400 BCE. It measures over 3 feet long and has knife cuts. Those puzzled archaeologists until one team member recognized them as tang, or pliers, used to secure loads on sleds when transporting hay or leaving for animal food. People in the area used hay sleds with pliers until the 1950s, when tractors became more common. Now, let's get back in time to thousands of years ago. We can easily do that by looking at this woolly mammoth. This creature looks a bit like a cherished but slightly worn-out toy. This ancient giant, whose heyday was 39,000 years ago, is the best-preserved mammoth ever found. Even its signature shaggy hair is surprisingly well-preserved, having been trapped in glacial ice until its recent discovery in Siberia. This remarkable animal is stepping into the limelight in Yokohama, Japan. Scientists are running tests that might bring this extinct species back to life. When they stumbled upon this female mammoth, they uncovered a hidden treasure, a sample of her blood preserved beneath the ice. So they believe this ancient blood could hold the key to resurrecting the mammoth. They also found well-preserved muscle tissue. She was between 50 and 60 years old when she met her icy fate. The discovery of mammoth blood has reignited debates about the ethics of bringing back extinct creatures, like in Jurassic Park. Their ambitious plan is to implant an egg into a living elephant for a 22-month pregnancy, hoping that at least one living mammoth cell might survive. Hop on, we're going to the French Alps. We are at a spot not far from where an Air India plane tragically crashed 46 years ago. We're accompanied by a diligent mountain rescuer and his neighbor. They went to this area after a bunch of tourists had noticed a strange-looking thingy on a glacier. It was a bag. The Indian embassy in Paris got wind of it, and it was all set on getting that bag. What makes it kinda cool is that it had Diplomatic Mail and Ministry of External Affairs written on it. The Air India flight was on its way from Mumbai to New York when it took a nosedive in January 1966. It took 117 people on board down with it. Guess what else was inside the bag besides the soaked diplomatic mail? It had a stack of old Indian newspapers. So, alongside those, they also found bits of the plane's cabin, a lone shoe, and a bunch of cables. Totally unexpected treasures on that mountain. During the summer of 2013, scientists stumbled upon a message left behind by a geologist named Walker, who had placed it there 44 years before. That message sort of served as the man's last testament. He passed away just a month after hiding the bottle in the rocks on the island. The content of the message was quite astounding. In 1959, Walker had measured the distance from those very stones to the glacier's edge, and it clocked in at a mere 167 feet. By 2013, that distance had ballooned to 400 feet. Researchers are convinced that this stark contrast between the two measurements underscores the consequences of ongoing global warming. Imagine the melting ice in Norway's mountains as a time machine revealing a treasure trove. Nearly 800 Viking artifacts tucked away for over 1,000 years have been unearthed. They give us a peek into the bustling trade networks of the Viking era and the critical role of the mountain passes in this ancient commerce. Among the finds are leather shoes, cozy woolen mittens, stylish tunics, feathered arrowheads, horseshoes, walking sticks, and kitchen gadgets from the Viking chef's toolkit. There are even Viking pack horse souvenirs. These artifacts provide us with insights into ancient travel habits and the peak times when those paths were bustling with activity, and give us a glimpse into the lives of adventurers.
Hold on to your hat, my friend. These internet users came across some hauntingly spooky stuff IRL, but I'm guessing you'll want to stay away even from these pics. Picture this. You're boarded and ready for takeoff in a huge Boeing jet. It's your first time on an airplane. You were scared, but people kept telling you it was safe. You've convinced yourself it would be all right when the pilot comes on the speaker with some disturbing news. Good morning, folks. Our flight has been canceled for safety reasons. It appears that a cloud of bees is hovering close to one of our wings, and we'll have to remove them before takeoff. I have to say, this is a first. I have to say, I'd like to get off, please. Now let's say you always take the long way to work. It's one of your favorite bits of the day because you can enjoy a peaceful walk surrounded by beautiful scenery. You're passing across a muddy pond area, like you normally do, when something strange catches your attention. What on earth could that be, you ask yourself? Apparently, it's a colony of reddish worms, just casually existing. I think my stomach just turned a little. Have you ever backpacked anywhere around the world? If you have, then you were probably worried about one thing and one thing only – bed bugs. Getting into a new hostel, the typical routine is to check your mattresses. The worst thing is to sleep in a bed filled with these little creatures and then have to wash all your clothing the next morning just so you won't pass this around to other establishments. If you ask me, this appears like a bed bug and sci-fi beetle had a fight in this person's bed and this is what was left. Well, jokes aside, it reminds me of the remains of some bug. Which bug? I have no idea. I'd tell this woman and all hostel owners to use some kind of mattress protector, just so that backpackers all over the world can stop sweating so much over these tiny creatures. Now, you've just won an all-inclusive trip to Hawaii. Ah, the white sandy beaches and the amazing sunsets. You're happy to leave your fancy hotel and take long walks on the beach. But wait, what's that? It appears like a lobster shed its tail and the remains came floating all the way to the sand. But according to experts, that's not a lobster. They wouldn't shed just their tail. That appears to be some kind of isopod. Isopods are crustaceans that look somewhere between shrimps and lobsters. That's why you thought it was a lobster, huh? They also look like giant roly-polies. Do you know what these are? Someone had a roly-poly infestation in their house And it does not look like something you want to have to deal with. Imagine spending your days hunting these tiny creatures all over your furniture. No thanks. Now, when I was a kid, I loved playing pranks on people. But I would be the first one to be completely spooked when someone played a prank on me. I'm guessing the person who ran into this thing on their office wall wasn't too pleasant. But hey, maybe it's karma, right? What goes around comes straight back around. Imagine it's a sunny Sunday morning and you went on a hike with your best friends. You hiked up a pretty steep mountain covered in knee-high vegetation. You know what that means, right? Bugs. The great thing about bugs is that they never cease to amaze you. There are endless varieties of extremely rare and never-before-seen bizarre bugs. The first one you met was this thing right here. It fell off your dog's back. It resembles a jackfruit seed mated with a spider, and this is what came out of that union. Hopefully, it's just a bizarre insect and not threatening in any way. Your sock also picked up a few buddies along the way. Look at the number of ticks your sock protected you from. The next time you go on a hike like this one, you should take some kind of bug repellent with you, but a strong and effective one. You know, like an ultrasonic repellent that disorients ticks, so they'll never find the way to your juicy socks. And speaking of bugs, quick test here to find out if you're the type of person that loves or loathes the great outdoors. Imagine it's early in the morning and you just woke up in a remote house found deep inside a forest. You step outside, and the first thing you see on the porch is a snake casually passing by. Would you take a selfie with it, or close the doors and hide back in your covers as fast as humanly possible? Or maybe you just woke up, opened the door to the outside world, and got to be the sole witness of a bug molting. Would you shed a happy tear or be disgusted by it? I mean, look at it. It seems like a baby Pokemon. So cute. Ah, it's summertime. My favorite time of the year. You can enjoy the pool until late in the evening and meet your friends and family for a Sunday outdoor picnic. But there's one thing that really annoys me: bees. Eating outdoors usually means having to share some of your juice or yummy food with a bunch of bees. If only some genius person invented something that kept bees away from our food, like some ultrasonic frequency we could blast on our speakers, or some kind of decoy nest that was more interesting to the bees than my picnic food. Oh, or maybe this. I guess this will do. Simple but effective. I'll try it out and tell you if it worked out for me. The best thing after a hard day's work is coming home. Except when you're welcomed by this thing. I mean, how did this spider even get here if you live in a city apartment miles away from any real greenery? That's a mystery I'll never solve. You take your 5-year-old to play in the local park. She's in a digging phase, so as soon as she gets there, she starts digging up the whole place like a Jack Russell Terrier. You watch her have buckets of fun when suddenly you spot a shiny blue thing crawling out of the hole. What on earth? You think to yourself. You grab it with a stick and it reveals itself. A centipede. You know, the things that burn you with their venomous legs. Best to put it back in the hole and move to another park. If you could choose any movie or TV series to live inside of, which one would you choose? Most likely some cozy rom-com, right? I'm guessing no one, or almost no one here, would choose to live life as a Last of Us character, right? But it seems to me like this person had a Joel moment, if you ask me. This thing crawling out of the forest floor is a fungus that imitates a human hand. I mean, does life imitate art, or is it really just one giant messy blob? Remember when we talked about backpackers? Well, this person had a similar problem as they do. Apparently, they took a bunch of clothes to wash and dry, and this is what the dryer filter looked like afterward. There are maybe 100 little buddies in there. Ooh. Out of curiosity, do you know why they're called bed bugs if they hide on the floor and not in your bed? They crawl up to someone's bed at nighttime because they can sense carbon dioxide emissions, also known as they can sense your breath. If this isn't a horror movie plot, I'm not sure what is. Where do I even start with this one? I'd say this piece was actually a prop from a Tim Burton movie that somehow got lost and ended up in your vegetable basket. It's supposed to be a yam, but it's shaped like Grinch's hand if he were white instead of green. Oh my! In my wildest dreams, I couldn't make this stuff up. In the US, people experience 250,000 human bites, 400,000 cat bites, and 4.5 million dog bites each year. Yes, adorable animals can still attack you unexpectedly. Let's take a look at the cutest and fiercest examples. Forget about these viral videos of people hugging pandas. These cuddly-looking cuties can be surprisingly dangerous. Despite cartoonish looks, they're still wild and they will attack a human when they feel threatened. Even a snow leopard is scared to mess with an adult panda. So, if you ever meet this animal in person, keep a healthy distance, especially if it has cubs. Pandas switched from omnivorous to a vegetarian diet a couple of million years ago, but they still have these carnivorous teeth and retractable claws in their paws that can easily cut your skin. Today, scientists speculate that pandas' strict bamboo diet may be contributing to their extinction. So, it makes sense to plant some more bamboo to prevent these fluffy monsters from returning to their carnivorous habits, huh? But let's say you're hiking in the woods in China and suddenly a ferocious panda jumps out of nowhere. First of all, make sure to carry bear spray and be ready to use it. You can pretend you're not alive, especially if the panda is too big to fight with. Don't rush to run away, though. Instead, try talking to the animal while backing away slowly. If a panda follows you while you're hiking, make loud noises along the trail to scare it away. The smell of food can attract pandas, as well as snow leopards, so avoid cooking if you know you're being stalked. And speaking of deceptive fluffballs, koalas and wombats can't be trusted either. These Australian animals are closest relatives, so they share some common traits. Koalas are territorial creatures, and they don't hesitate to use their sharp claws and teeth to prove it. If a koala starts biting you, it won't let go easily. You'll have to pull it away. So it would be wise to wear long trousers and a jacket to provide additional protection to your skin. Also, make sure to protect your pets, because koalas definitely won't do that. Now, don't be tricked by those cuddly videos of people with koalas, too. These are zoo animals that have gone through a long bonding journey before becoming human-friendly. If you ever come across these creatures in the wild, don't try to take a selfie and avoid triggering them with loud noises. Although koalas are known for sleeping 22 hours a day, it doesn't mean you can't trigger them. Koalas tend to get more alarmed when they detect strangers within a 16-foot radius. By the way, spraying urine on enemies is one of the koala's favorite defense mechanisms. The majority of koalas in the wild can spread unpleasant conditions, so that's another huge reason to stay away from them. Now, wombats may look like innocent, friendly hamsters, but these nocturnal marsupials are known for attacking people, dogs, and even wild dingoes. Yep, they bit several people so badly that they needed hospitalization. So, the safety rules are the same as with koalas. No hugs, no selfies. By the way, if you dare to run away from a wombat, keep in mind it can run up to 25 miles per hour. What about you? Now, take swans. When it comes to personal boundaries, these fancy birds can show some sinister traits too. Swans can defend their mates and nests very aggressively, which includes biting and even taking your life. Their nesting season between April and June is especially dangerous. So, if you're swimming or even walking near a body of water in spring and you spot a sneaky swan coming your way, make sure to keep a respectful distance. You don't want to try to touch or feed them. Don't do anything that can provoke the birds. And heaven forbid you to approach their nests. Beware of the mute swan. It's one of the biggest hooligans in the bird world. These guys are less vocal compared to other swan species, so they can skip warning shouts and simply attack you in total silence. If it happens, don't rush to run away. Instead, try to stay calm, keep on facing the swan, and slowly back away. Using a barrier, such as a fence or a tree, can be helpful too. You can also trick the swan into believing that you're a bigger bird. Just show them an open umbrella or a wide piece of clothing that imitates wings, if you happen to have it handy. Sometimes you can come across a swan that looks like it needs your help. Even if it breaks your heart, safety rules don't recommend trying to save the bird on your own. That's because the swan may perceive your help as a threat. Instead, you should notify local wildlife authorities, and they'll take proper care of the animal. There are many stories of dolphins saving people and being cute and playful, but their games can be surprisingly dangerous, especially in the wild. Even sharks can lose their lives if they mess with the wrong willy. Swimming with these smiley creatures is riskier than you might think. Dolphins can start pushing you with their powerful noses and bodies. In some cases, they can pull you underwater and bite you with their sharp teeth. Unfortunately, not everyone survives such an encounter. So, how do you tell a good dolphin from a sinister one? Well, first of all, if the dolphin is wild, never attempt to feed, pet, or play with it. If you see them flapping their jaws, chasing, slapping their tails in the water, or even releasing clouds of bubbles from their blowholes, take this as a sign of aggression. If you ever find yourself kayaking or swimming in the water with an aggressive dolphin, leave the area as soon as possible. Want to see one of the most poisonous creatures on Earth? Well, here you go. It's hard to resist putting this colorful guy on your palm to take a cute picture. But this could be your last photo shoot. The 2-inch-long golden poison dart frog has enough venom to take the lives of 10 healthy adult men. This toxin is meant to attack the predator's nervous system and cause muscle contractions, respiratory paralysis, and even worse. Unlike snakes and scorpions, dart frogs don't need to bite to transfer their venom. They excrete it through their skin glands. So if you ever happen to touch this cutie by mistake, don't rub your eyes and wash your hands immediately. The toxin has to get into your bloodstream to affect you. So if you have any cuts on your skin, it makes sense to go to the hospital as soon as possible. Keep in mind that dart frog's skin tends to poison everything it touches, and the toxin can remain on those objects for up to a year. Aw, look at this cute Shrek-eyed toy. Wait a second, it's alive! Say hello to one of the few venomous mammals on the planet, the slow loris. It's no wonder that this furry creature is the star of the shadow pet market, but you should read the directions before purchasing it, since a refund is unlikely to be possible. You may have seen this animal raising its hands as if surrendering to the police. You wish. Slow loris has a toxin released from its bronchial gland on the sides of its elbows. This innocent-looking fluffy takes the venom into its mouth to mix it with its saliva. After that, it can rub its hair with the toxin to scare away its rivals. Or give you a fierce venomous bite that you'll never forget. This toxin causes anaphylactic shock, so it's dangerous to human life. Do you still want to bring this cutie home? Nah, I didn't think so. Now, just because the platypus looks like an ancient Pokemon, it doesn't mean you can let your guard down. Male platypuses have a special tool to fight for mates – hidden sharp spurs on their hind feet. They contain a dose of venom that's fatal to a dog-sized animal. But it doesn't mean you're safe. They can attack humans, too. And the sensation caused by the platypus's venom is described as long-lasting intense ache that cannot be relieved with conventional medicines. So, never try to pet this cutie. It's not worth it. There are many more cute but vicious animals on the planet, so remember that looks can be deceiving. And stay safe.
You're out in the wild camping. What happens if you hear a roar? Is it a bear? Now bear with me. I'll explain how to avoid bear attacks while camping. Then I'll move on to some tips about protecting yourself from wild animals. Let's start with a case study. Leah Davis Locan was a 65-year-old woman who was camping near the small town of Ovando in 2021. The town borders a large forest that has around 1,000 grizzly bears living in it. Anyway, she set up her tent behind a nearby museum building. There was a couple close to her tent. They were also camping. Later in the night, a bear came close to their tents. Locan heard the bear sniffing her head. Imagine waking up in your tent and hearing a bear huffing at you. Luckily, the couple came to help and they were able to scare the bear away. Locan had snacks in her tent, which might have been the reason why the bear approached her. She took the food and stacked it in the museum building. She returned to her tent, put a bear spray can at her side, and got back to sleep. Around 4 a.m., the couple was woken up by some noises. They saw the bear near Locan's tent again. They made the animal go away, but it was already too late when the paramedics arrived. Why did the bear come back? What went wrong this time? Firstly, Locan indeed hid the snacks in the museum building. Yet, she forgot to get rid of the food bags left on her bike, which was about 10 feet away from her tent. Secondly, she kept 2 bags in her tent which she had previously put dried blueberries. Naturally, the bags still smelled like berries. The bear returned to the camping area again and found Locan's tent. Officials said that probably a move Locan made unintentionally while she was sleeping triggered the animal to act. The reason wasn't clear. Wildlife officials added that if a grizzly bear came close to a tent, campers should stay elsewhere and not return to the tent for the night. So, Locan's fatal mistake was to return to the tent for the second time. The bear was put to sleep after this event when it was caught in a nearby henhouse. This means improper food storage can have consequences for both animals and people. Would things go differently if Locan applied the Bermuda Triangle technique? This technique aims to give people a bear-safe camping experience. So probably yes. Bermuda Triangle suggests setting up your tent, kitchen area, and food storage 70 large steps, or, to be more precise, 200 feet apart from each other. Bears can smell food from 2 to 3 miles away. That's why the empty blueberry container was sort of like an invitation to the bear in Locan's case. But even if your food is kept away, a bear may approach your tent to investigate. And if you put your food in a further place, you'll be safe. First, you need to find a safe sleeping area. Your base is supposed to be that spot. It should be outside the triangle, not in the middle. At one vertex of the imaginary triangle, you have your cooking area. At the second one, you have a bear canister. And the last vertex is for the wastewater. Bears are likely to move between these areas. You shouldn't keep any food inside your tent or near your tent. Did you know that a black bear can smell 7 times better compared to a bloodhound? It might be surprising, but they can smell things like lip balm and food-splattered shirts too. So if you cook wearing one outfit, don't climb into your sleeping bag with the same clothes on. And leave your cosmetic products like lip balm in your backpack, away from your tent. How to store your food in these areas then? The answer is bear canisters. If you hang your food on a tree in a regular bag, you might not find it there the next day. It's better to store food inside a bear-resistant container. In some camping areas, using bear-resistant food containers is actually mandatory. Bears are smart and motivated animals, especially black bears, because they have become habituated to our food. This means once they've tasted it, they'll want more of it. Bears don't just look for food in camping areas. If you store some food in your car, they can get inside too. Imagine going to a bungalow on a mountain trip and parking your car in the parking lot. The next morning, you go to the car and see that it looks like a car from the Resident Evil game. A bear has bashed the closed windows. Bears can visually recognize and associate food-related stuff, like coolers. They can damage a car just for a can of soda or sweets. The solution is simple. Don't leave these kinds of items inside your vehicle. Can bears get into RVs too? A typical male black bear weighs around 200 to 300 pounds, and an average male grizzly is around 600 pounds. So yeah, they can. Luckily, they don't want to be near people unless they're hungry. That's comforting. Bears can come after you if you somehow trigger them though. The solution is, again, putting food-related things away. For example, don't leave your trash outside at night, and keep your outdoor stove or grill clean. Motion alarms too can be effective to detect intruders. Speaking of motion alarms, I want to mention a newbie of the technology, the BearDar. It's a wordplay. This is an iPad-sized radar. This device is designed to detect polar bears. In some parts of the world, polar bears spend more and more time near human compounds looking for food. They sometimes encounter people, and it doesn't end well. A BearDar can be used to prevent such incidents. Since their prime hunting ground starts to melt, polar bears visit towns and dig trash dumpsters. The portable radar unit warns residents that a bear is nearby. When a person wants to get out of their house, they would know if the area is safe or not. How does it work? Well, the package consists of a radar and a camera. It either needs Wi-Fi or a network connection to transfer the data to a server, and, from there, to a computer or a phone. Here are some more wild animal safety tips. What will happen if you come face to face with a bear? I know it sounds impossible, but don't run or try to climb a tree. You should stay calm and slowly back away. Don't turn your back on the animal. Act as if you're the predator rather than the prey. Some sources say that if a bear makes contact with you, lie on the ground and play possum. Cover your neck with your hands and your face with your elbows. In that position, you'd think that an eternity has passed. But stay like that for some more time, as the bear might try to sniff you. If you get up too early, the bear can get interested in you again. If things go south and it tries to bite you, reply with all you've got. The basic principle is to give animals some space to leave. If you see a snake, move back. If it's a moose, again, give it some space. The moose warns you to leave them alone by tossing their head or smacking their lips. If it comes after you, then run. Try to put a tree between yourself and the animal while running. Squirrels might look cute, making you want to feed them. But don't forget, they're still wild animals. Plus, it's their territory. For the same reason, you shouldn't walk along the trail at night. You can't know for sure what to expect. Follow these rules and enjoy your time and beautiful scenery.
Lions, elephants, and bears. Oh my! 3 of the most beautiful yet intimidating members of the animal kingdom. But what intimidates these creatures, if anything? You might be surprised. Let's take a look. How about we start with the universally recognized king of the jungle, the lion. We'll get to the elephants in a moment, but there's actually one in the room. You know, the one that claims that a certain jungle cat is afraid of the most vital substance known to man? A small hint, it covers 70% of Earth's surface. So, is it true? Is the ferocious lion afraid of water? It's actually a myth. Lions enjoy taking a dip in the water because it allows them to cool off. This makes sense if you think about the climates the creatures have to face. Temperatures in a savanna climate range from 68 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. You know all of us humans hit the beach whenever the weather is like that. So why should we expect anything different from the lion? Especially given that the creatures typically carry around between 280 and 420 pounds of weight, as well as a thick coat of fur. The ironic thing about this whole lions are afraid of water myth is that they're actually fantastic swimmers. The same goes for all of your other favorite large cats from these warm weather climates, such as tigers, leopards, jaguars, and ocelots. It's actually large cats from cold climates that do their best to avoid water. This applies to such felines as bobcats, lynxes, and snow leopards. The latter lives in places like the cold alpine tundra biome. That's a rocky mountainous area. Temperatures there, on average, get as low as 33 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, it makes perfect sense that these big, cold weather cats despise water. Getting their fur coats wet would dampen their chances of staying warm. Pun intended. I don't think you have to look too far to piece together where this lions are afraid of water myth comes from. In fact, there's a good chance for some of you watching this video that the reason is near your computer screen right now, jumping around and causing mischief. That's right, we may have jumped ourselves to a conclusion that certain behavioral aspects of our own pet cats would match that of a lion. House cats, though related to all the previously mentioned big cats, are not actually directly descended from them. They instead have developed over millions of years from a single wild ancestor that still exists in the wild today, the Near Eastern wildcat. As water is not plentiful in the Middle East, these cats were not exposed to it to any great degree. Like their descendants, they only appreciate it as a food source. As you likely see with your pet, they hardly bathe, swim, or interact with water in general. Lucky for them, they don't even need to. These domestic felines use their tongues to clean themselves. They can do this because their tongues have tiny hook-shaped papillae. They assist cats in grooming out knots and keeping the coat clean, sweet-smelling, and in overall immaculate shape. Cats, in general, are individualistic creatures. And you may be screaming at your screen right now, proclaiming that your cat, in fact, loves water. And this is definitely possible. Some cats even like to play with water. For example, drips from the tap or bubbles in the bath. There are specific breeds of house cats that are known to enjoy the aqua life more than others. The Turkish Van, for example, which is also appropriately known as the swimming cat. It's believed that the breed developed an affinity for water by swimming in Lake Van to cool down. This lake is in the area the animals evolved from. Moving on to a problem a cat definitely doesn't have to deal with. Have you ever heard of musophobia, also known as suriphobia? Both words are valid names for a fear of mice and rats. There is a common belief that one particular animal that has this fear is the beautiful elephant. That's right, the same animal that, depending on the species, stands at the height of roughly 10 feet and weighs about 9,000 pounds. It's supposedly afraid of a creature that is a mere 4 inches in length and weighs less than 1 pound. But why did this belief appear? Well, the reasoning for this rumor is based on the possibility that elephants are paranoid about mice climbing inside their trunks. If a mouse succeeded in doing this, there would be a potential that it could cause irritation and blockage within the trunk. Now, I'm not trying to be the guy who spoils parties, but it looks like this belief is also a myth. Researchers claim that there's no concrete evidence that suggests elephants are afraid of mice. The most they'll concede is that the giant animal may sometimes take fright by the sudden appearance of the tiny rodent, which is the exact same for ourselves. Experts also claim that even if a mouse did get inside an elephant's trunk, the latter could effortlessly blow it back out with a puff of air. There's also some evidence that, in most cases, the animal remains unbothered by rodents and even allows mice to climb on their heads and trunks. Researchers are sure that as long as an elephant is healthy, there's no other animal that it fears simply because of its size. So, lions aren't afraid of water, elephants don't seem to be afraid of mice, then are any of these animal fear rumors real? We're probably going to be left just as disappointed by asking if a bear has any legit fear, right? Well, ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for none other than people's best friend. That's right, bears do feel quite uncomfortable whenever they are around dogs. And all this despite a very distant genetic link to them. When the two creatures encounter each other, the dog has the ability to chase, intimidate, corner, or antagonize the bear. As for the powerful animal, it will instead try to avoid any run-ins with the dog. There's even a type of Finnish dog breed known as the Karelian bear dog. This dog species is specifically used for standing up to large animals, such as bears. This dog has a great sense of direction, body flexibility and control, courage, sense of smell, and persistence. So, does this mean you can walk with your dog through an area known to have bears and feel absolutely calm and confident because of the presence of your loyal companion? Not really. Despite the fact that bears may be nervous around dogs, we can't forget their size and power. The American black bear can reach a height of nearly 7 feet and weigh up to 660 pounds. If a mother bear has nowhere to run or feels that her cubs might be in danger, it's extremely possible that she will lash out, which can only mean big trouble for you or your dog. So, nobody should ever test this theory. Instead, if you're ever planning to visit an unknown area with your dog, you should first plan ahead and familiarize yourself with the wildlife you may encounter there. because you never know what a bear will do when it notices you and your pooch, especially given their mild case of cynophobia, which is the name given to a fear of dogs. At least we were able to find one genuine fear of another animal out of these 3 tough members of the animal kingdom. Weird that a dog, something that gives so many of us such joy and comfort in our own homes, is still the creature that's brave enough to take on a bear if need be. Well, not all heroes wear capes. Some just wear fur and a dog collar. Why don't we take a look at what frightens these great companions of ours? Ever wondered why your own dog becomes uncomfortable when it hears loud noises? The degree of fear differs in each dog, but it's the simple unpredictability of thunder and flashing lightning, or loud bangs that accompany firework displays that causes your dog uneasiness. The inability to understand what's causing this deafening noise may cause your dog to tremble, tuck its tail between its legs, or even run away from home. Another thing that can really frighten our loyal pets is when we leave them all alone by themselves. This can, unfortunately, lead to being a nightmare for your next-door neighbors, because a common symptom of this fear is excessive barking. This fear may also cause problems closer to home. Ever asked yourself why your dog chewed up your sofa? Housebreaking accidents are typical when a dog has separation anxiety. You can't stay mad at your dog for long though, right? Your pooch will make it up to you when you guys run into a bear.
You're hiking the Point Reyes National Seashore, and you bump into a mountain lion. Stay calm. You need to show it that you're not scared. Shout loudly at the lion. Wave your arms. If that doesn't work, start throwing rocks, branches, or anything else you can get your hands on. Aim at the ground in front of the lion. Never throw anything directly at it. That will only make it angrier. If the lion is getting closer, protect your most vulnerable spots. It will aim for the neck and try to grab your arms, so tilt your head forward and protect your neck. And don't make sweeping arm movements. When the lion realizes that you're not an easy opponent, it will probably back off and run away. You're in Yellowstone. Here you have to come face to face with the grizzly bear. It's drinking water from a creek. A safe distance is 200 feet. The grizzly has spotted you. It stands on its hind legs and looks in your direction. Now it's about the height of an average basketball player, and it weighs almost 800 pounds, so you don't stand a chance to win. You have to freeze in place. Grizzlies have poor eyesight, so it just might not see you. But then it starts walking in your direction. Don't turn your back to it, and don't even try to run as fast as you can. It will chase you. You need to seem bigger than you really are. Wave your arms and spread your legs a little wider. Always talk and shout at the bear. It will understand that you're not a humble deer. Try to make a clanking sound of metal. If you have food with you, don't throw it at the bear. Just put it on the ground and keep backing away while facing the bear. If it starts running towards you, your only chance is to fall to the ground and freeze. Bears aren't scavengers, so if it thinks you're not alive, it'll just sniff you, shrug, and walk away. Now you go diving on the Florida coast. You have to protect yourself from the great white shark. Never wear shiny and blinging jewelry when swimming. It attracts sharks. And never swim at night. This is when they go out looking for food. Lots of splashing water can also attract this marine predator. But if the shark swims towards you anyway, the rule here is 1. Do everything in your power to defeat it. Try to stay calm and swim to the shore. If the shark chooses you as food, there's only one thing that can scare it off. Try to punch the shark in the nose, eyes, or gills. Now you're in Africa. Here in the tall grass of the savannah, you see a lion, and worse, it sees you. The first thing you need to do is maintain eye contact. Don't turn your back to the lion and don't run. This 8-foot predator, weighing like 3 adults, is running at you at the speed of a car on the highway. But then it stops abruptly and continues to stare at you. Lions often make fake charges to frighten their opponent. At this point, you have to appear much bigger than you really are. Spread your arms and make loud noises. Then the lion can make another fake charge, and if you keep standing still, the lion will realize you're a strong opponent and go the other way. The female lion is way more dangerous than the male one. If it's guarding the babies, it won't stop and you won't stand a chance. Your safari jeep takes you to the next location. You see elephants peacefully drinking water. These guys can be 10 feet tall and weigh as much as 2 SUVs. They can even flip cars over with their powerful tusks. And now, one of them sees you and wags its big ears. It's bluffing. With those ears, the elephant wants to appear bigger and scare you away. It's also scared and won't run at you all the way. You must let the elephant know you're not threatening it. Don't yell or wave your arms. Take slow steps back until you leave the elephant's personal space. If it runs at you with ears to its head, it's not bluffing. Climbing a tree isn't a good option right now. It might ram the tree and you'll fall down. It might even tilt the tree with its strong trunk. You need to run in a zigzag pattern. The elephant is heavy and it's hard for it to change directions quickly, so gradually you'll start to pull away from it. But still remember that an elephant can run 25 miles per hour, so you'll unlikely escape from it. Now let's move on to the Nile River. It has the largest number of crocodiles in the world. If you are camping, take a distance of at least 160 feet from the shore. This way, the crocodile will not stumble upon your camp at night. Never take your eyes off the crocodile. It can take advantage of that moment and take you by surprise. Their top speed is only 10 miles per hour, but they can make charges at 40 feet per second from the water. So the only chance to survive is to stay out of the water. If not, the crocodile's weak points are the eyes, the tip of the nose, and the membrane in the throat. This membrane prevents water from entering the crocodile's throat. When running away from a crocodile, be careful not to bump into a hippopotamus. This is one of the most dangerous animals in the world. They can be the size of a business class car and weigh as much as a big elephant. And they can run as fast as horses, so they're sure to outrun you in a sprint. The main thing is to not frighten it. If you're standing far away, get its attention with a loud sound. Usually they will try to get away from you. Use this moment to back away too. But if you see a hippo yawning, it's a sign that you're violating its comfort zone. They can open their mouth at 180 degrees and have the bite force of a crocodile, so you can't beat it and have to run. The best option is to climb a tree or some kind of slope. Hippos have a hard time climbing high places, and if you manage to escape, you'd be one of the few people who survived a face-to-face encounter with a hippo. There's also buffaloes living here in the savannah. They can be as tall as an adult and weigh a whole ton. And unlike lions and elephants, they don't make a fake charge. If you see this machine running at you, it definitely has evil intentions. Their powerful horns and skull can bend sheets of metal. They can turn a new car into a pile of scrap metal. You can never outrun a buffalo, so your only option is to find the nearest tree and run to it before the buffalo even starts its charge. If you run into a snake, you need to freeze in place. There are endless species of snake, and you don't know if your opponent is venomous or not. So you definitely need to avoid getting bitten. Make smooth and slow backward movements. If the snake is following you, stop and start stomping your feet. The strong vibrations of the ground should scare it away. If the snake bit you anyway, try to remember exactly what it looked like. Better yet, take a picture of it. To neutralize the venom, you need to take an antidote to the specific venom of that species of snake. You're on your way to Northeast Asia. As you're going through the dense jungle, you see a clearing. Several wild boars are peacefully grazing there. One of them is a female with several children. It'll do anything to protect them, so it's especially aggressive now. Oops, it spotted you. Get ready to defend yourself. If the wild boar is making high-pitched, piercing cries, it's going to strike you. The first thing you need to do is to stay calm and stand still. You have a good chance that the boar will go on its way, but you see it starting to run. And now you have several options. A, you can run away. B, you can face the blow. And C, climb the nearest tree. The first option is wrong. Wild boars can run almost as fast as Usain Bolt, and when it catches up to you, its sharp tusks won't leave you a chance. Option B, stay where you are. Wrong. A wild boar can weigh as much as a motorcycle and be almost as long as an adult. A hit at 25 miles per hour will just knock you down. So the correct option is to climb the nearest tree. If there's no trees, then climb a car or a tall rock. You have to be in a higher position than the boar. When it realizes it can't reach you, it'll leave you alone. The most important thing is to stay away from wild boars. Never try to feed them or provoke them. Birds, just like us, have a tongue that is held up by a bone called the hyoid. In humans, it looks like a horseshoe and is located under our jaw. That's what the muscle in the tongue are attached to. This bone is very important for us. It helps us breathe, swallow, and talk. Unlike us, woodpeckers have a very different hyoid bone. It's a big part of their body that allows them to peck really fast. It also helps them keep their head steady and lets them use a lot of force when they peck wood. A woodpecker's tongue is long and it has spikes on it, which helps the bird get bugs out of trees. Woodpeckers can also move it in and out, which is not very common in most birds. This tongue also has a special way of wrapping around the woodpecker's skull to keep it safe when the bird pecks. The tip of the tongue is also covered with a sticky substance, which helps to catch bugs better. Speaking of weird animals, ever heard of an axolotl? You might also know it as a Mexican walking fish. It's a type of salamander. It's a unique species known for its ability to regenerate its limbs. Axolotls are typically found in lakes, streams, and canals in and around Mexico City. Their appearance, with the wide head and long, feathery external gills, is unusual compared to other amphibians. They're often kept as pets because of what they look like. Rats may not be your first choice when thinking about weird animals, but let me tell you about the naked mole rat. This one is considered weird because of its unique physical characteristics and behavior. For starters, it's nearly blind and has translucent, pink skin. These animals also live in large underground colonies with a strict social hierarchy, with one dominant female and several male mates. The creature, also known as the sand puppy, has a low metabolic rate, which allows it to survive on very little oxygen and food. Even their lifespan is unusual, much longer than that of most other rodents. Some specimens even live up to 30 years in captivity. This unusual creature is considered the superhero of all rats, being immune to pain caused by high levels of acid. This makes it capable of living in environments that would be dangerous to other animals. Dogs are one of the most common species of animals these days, but not the Commandor dog. This one is a weird dog breed because of its unique appearance. It has a long, thick, corded coat that resembles dreadlocks. Additionally, it's a large and imposing breed, standing at around 27 inches tall and weighing up to 110 pounds. Its size and appearance can make it seem intimidating to some people, but most dog breed specialists say it can be a loving family pet if properly trained. Imagine that food bill, though. The star-nosed mole is an equally weird animal because it has a distinctive star-shaped snout that is highly sensitive. It helps these animals locate and identify food underwater really efficiently. This mole is also an expert burrower and has feet with claws, which allows it to dig through the ground with ease. Among its other unique traits, there is a high metabolic rate and the ability to eat food at an incredibly fast rate. A crab with a weakness for coconuts? That's probably where the coconut crab got its name. It's widely seen as a quirky animal because of its strong, claw-like legs that allow it to climb trees and open coconuts. This is a unique ability among crabs. It's also the largest land-dwelling arthropod in the world, reaching up to 3 feet in length and weighing up to 9 pounds. The coconut crab also lives a pretty long life, with some specimens even getting to celebrate their 60th birthday. Look at this face. See these bulging eyes, huge ears, and tufts of hair? This image is not photoshopped. It's a real animal called the eye. This quirky-looking creature is a long-fingered lemur, native to the island of Madagascar. It comes equipped with rodent-like teeth that never stop growing and a special thin middle finger. The eye is also the world's largest nocturnal primate. The weirdest thing about it? Its method of finding food. It taps on trees to find grubs, then gnaws holes in the wood using its forward-slanted incisors to create a small hole. It then inserts its narrow middle finger to pull the grubs out. The eye also has a distinctive call that has been described as a shrieking screech. The echidna is a weird animal because it's a mammal, but it also lays eggs. Not only that, but it has spines like a porcupine, a tongue like an anteater, and a long snout that resembles a beak. Because they're pretty shy animals, they need their sharp claws to dig holes in the ground to hide. The echidna likes to eat bugs and has a special tongue that helps it catch them. The Dumbo octopus has large ear-like fins that give it a distinctive appearance, resembling the cartoon character Dumbo the elephant. It also has a unique method of propulsion. The octopus uses its ear-like fins to fly through the water instead of using traditional tentacles like other octopuses. More so, it lives in the ocean at depths of up to 13,000 feet, which makes it difficult for humans to observe and study this creature. The panda ant, also known as the cow ant or velvet ant, is a species of wasp that is known for its unusual looks. It's called a panda ant because it has a black and white coloration resembling that of a panda bear. The ant is considered weird because it's not actually an ant, but a species of wasp. Additionally, its large size makes it stand out from other insects. Make room for the Honduran white bat, which is weird because it's one of only a few species of bats that have white fur. It's also unusual because it has a unique mating behavior, with the males taking care of multiple females and aggressively defending them from other males. Additionally, it's one of the few bat species that feed primarily on pollen and nectar from flowers rather than insects. Another animal with a striking physique is the saiga antelope. It has a bulbous nose and large protruding eyes. This adaptation helps the animal filter out dust and regulate its body temperature in the harsh desert habitat. Sadly, the saiga antelope experiences a rapid population decline and is considered critically endangered, which is unusual for an antelope species. The mata-mata turtle is considered unusual, and not just because of its name. It has a flattened and elongated shell, a pointed snout, and bony protrusions on its head that resemble horns. Its skin is also covered in ridges and bumps, giving it a rough, dangerous-looking appearance. Its movements are slow and sluggish, and you'll often see it lying motionless for long periods of time, waiting for its prey to pass by. The okapi is truly one of a kind. That's because it's not closely related to any other known species of animals. It has a unique combination of physical characteristics, including a long neck and body, short legs, and striped markings on its backside, which makes it stand out from other animals. You can only find it in a small region of Central Africa, which only adds to its uniqueness and mystery. Ever heard of Gobi jerboa? It's not a fantastic beast, though judging by the name, you may be tricked into thinking that. It has long hind legs for jumping, a tail for balance, and large ears for hearing. Its habitat is equally as special since the animal lives in the harsh regions of the Gobi Desert in Asia.
Once upon a time, James White used to work for the Cape Town Port Elizabeth Railway and jumped from car to car to get the job done faster, even when the trains were moving. He did it so often that he even got the nickname Jumper. One day, James lost both legs in a terrible train accident because of that habit. He was devastated, but he didn't give up. He got new legs out of wooden pegs and took a job at a railway station. He got to work with a wooden trolley he constructed himself, and it wasn't easy for him. Then he found a solution, a loyal friend, and a helper, all in one package. Jumper met Jack, the baboon, leading an ox wagon at the market. James was so impressed by the baboon's skills, he knew he would be a great help in his work. He convinced the owner to sell Jack to him and started training his new assistant immediately. Jack quickly learned to help Jumper around the house and to push his trolley to work. Then his new owner decided to take it one step further and teach the smart baboon to help him at work as well. His job was to make sure the trains were on schedule and went down the assigned tracks. An approaching train would notify him with a certain number of whistles, and James' task would be to listen carefully and change the track by pulling the correct lever. Jack turned out to be a good student. First, he learned to pull the right lever when his owner would show him the number with his fingers. Then, he learned to recognize the pattern of whistles and do the job himself. He also helped with the station's garden. James could completely rely on his smart assistant and just relax while Jack was on duty. They were working as a great team until one day, a posh passenger traveling through the station noticed a baboon was in charge of levers. After a complaint, the railway officials sent a manager to the station to fire James, as he had never informed his bosses his assistant was not human. Once the inspection arrived, James managed to convince them to give the baboon a chance to show his talents and then make the final decision. The managers agreed to it and were so impressed they officially hired Jack to work for the railway and even gave him a salary of 20 cents. It was all happening in the 1880s, so the pay wasn't that bad. Jack worked for 9 years without making a single mistake until he passed away. He became a real celebrity and had many fans among passengers and the locals. He loved his master a lot and would make people go, "Ah," as he embraced James around the neck with his arms. Beautiful Jim Key was another super-intelligent animal that went down in history. His owner, William Key, loved all animals, but especially horses. He became a self-taught veterinarian and a trainer and decided to take up horse racing. He bought an Arabian mare named Loretta, which used to be a famous circus horse. Loretta soon gave birth to a foal, and William was hoping it would go down in history as a powerful racing horse. The foal didn't live up to his expectations, as it was frail, weak, and could barely walk. Jim spent a lot of time with William and even slept inside the house by the fireplace. As he was growing up, the horse started picking up tricks, mostly from the family dog. He would pick up sticks, roll over, and sit to get treats. William's wife, Lucinda, was the first to discover Jim had other talents as well. He learned to answer yes or no questions. Jim would nod his head up and down when someone asked, "Would you like a piece of apple?" He would shake his head from side to side when someone would offer him to go outside in rainy weather. William started training Jim and helped him master the alphabet, spell small words, and count. He could also tell time, use a cash register, dial phone numbers, sort mail, and even faint on command. The owner decided to start a show with Jim as the main star, and it was an instant success. Some people didn't believe it was real, but they were curious to see it anyway. William and Jim Key became famous across the country. Jim's mug was on buttons and postcards. They had their final show in 1906, but the important lesson they taught still lives on. You can teach animals a lot if you treat them with kindness, not cruelty. A border collie in the U.S. named Chaser knew the names of over 1,000 of her toys. Chaser broke the record held by another dog named Rico, who scored 200 words. Chaser was a birthday gift for a psychology professor who started training her when she was 6 weeks old. It was a research project for her owner. Chaser learned to identify 50 toys with their names when she was 5 months old. The owners gave each toy a name and wrote it with a marker not to forget it themselves. They would practice 4 to 5 hours per day. As the training continued for several years, Chaser ended up with the largest tested memory of any non-human animal. She also knew her toys by categories and could perform specific commands. She would touch a certain ball with her paw or fetch a particular frisbee her owners wanted to. Chaser did it without any treats as a reward. She purely enjoyed the process. Now, elephants are known to be super smart animals with huge brains and a great memory, capable of showing empathy. Koshik is a male Indian elephant who was born in 1990 and lives at a zoo in South Korea. He became famous when someone filmed him speaking. Well, in fact, he imitates words just like parrots do, but it's not something you would expect from an elephant. Koshik can pronounce the Korean words for yes, no, sit, lie down, and 4 other words. He puts his trunk inside his mouth and shakes it while exhaling to change the tone and pitch of the sounds he produces. If you can whistle with your fingers in your mouth, it's a lot like that. Researchers don't know if Koshik actually understands the meanings of any of the words he knows, and they have a theory that he learned to speak like this because he was separated from other elephants when he was 5 and had to cope with loneliness somehow. Coco the gorilla became an international star as she mastered sign language. She knew over 1,000 signs and was able to understand 2,000 words in English. She made it to the cover of the National Geographic magazine twice. First, with a selfie she took in the mirror, which was a pretty new genre in 1978. For the second time, she was featured in a story about her and her pet kitten. Coco was born at the San Francisco Zoo in 1971. A researcher started working with her when Coco was 1 year old. Working with her helped scientists conclude that great apes have language skills similar to human offspring. Coco also showed emotions similar to human ones. She had a sense of humor and a certain sense of mischievousness. Once, Coco didn't like an interviewer, so she called her a toilet using sign language. Octopi are master escape artists. They can pop lids off jars, compress their bodies, and climb out of tiny holes. Otto the octopus from Germany went further than that and learned to short-circuit the entire electrical system at the aquarium. The employees couldn't understand what was going on, so they decided to stay over at night. Otto sprayed water at the 2,000-watt lights above his tank, and the entire electrical system would burn. It looked like he was just bored in the winter months when the aquarium was closed. He was also seen juggling the hermit crabs in his tank and throwing stones against the glass, trying to damage it. Smart octopus. Hang in there, Otto.
Chances are you have a dog wagging its precious tail around the house or sniffing at your feet. Ever marveled at how keen your dog's hearing is? I mean, it can hear you opening a bag of chips even if you're on a different floor in the house. Even with this amazing ability, most household dogs don't have the best hearing in the animal kingdom. Actually, they're not even in the top 5. On that note, let's venture into the world of animal hearing and try to imagine what life sounds like for other creatures. Look, we humans are pretty great. We've got all kinds of talents, but when it comes to the Auditory Olympics, we're not even in the running. Put us next to a cat or a bat, and our ears look kind of basic. Take elephants, for instance. They are big animals, and so are their ears. Their auditory organs are capable of capturing infrasound waves. Now, these are not your run-of-the-mill sound waves. They're low-frequency, rumbling whispers that we humans can't hear. This means elephants can pick up on things like rain clouds on the move. Not only that, but these massive mammals have a pretty clever way of communicating too. They stomp the ground, creating vibrations barely noticeable to us. But to elephants, these vibrations are the equivalent of a long-distance phone call. The messages are received through their feet and ear bones, even when they're miles apart. Talk about having a good reception. Moving on to bats. They are the masters of night navigation, thanks to their use of echolocation. These animals emit high-frequency sounds which bounce back after hitting objects. This echo helps bats create a mental map, allowing them to sway flawlessly in the dark. Just when we thought bats couldn't get any cooler, scientists discovered their hearing capabilities extend to their wings. Special hairs called Merkel hairs sense air movements, helping the bats detect upcoming objects. It's not the traditional hearing we're used to, but it's a fantastic adaptation to their environment. Dolphins, on the other hand, are masters of watery acoustics. For starters, you might think that being underwater would put a damper on hearing, but dolphins have turned this challenge into an advantage. They've got their own version of echolocation, emitting sonic pulses from their foreheads. These sounds bounce off objects and are picked up by the dolphin's jaw before being sent to the brain via highly developed auditory nerves. Their ears, though present, don't play a central role in hearing like ours do. Instead, dolphins have found innovative ways to listen, proving yet again how awesome animals are. Don't let their domestic status fool you. Your pet cats and dogs are auditory champs. Cats' ears are designed to catch high-frequency sounds from up to 160 feet away. Handy for catching mice, don't you think? Dogs, on the other hand, are pros at localizing sounds, thanks to the muscles around their ears. Ever seen your pooch perk up their ears when they hear something suspicious? That's their sharp hearing at work. Even the tiniest critters buzzing around us, like insects, can actually listen to the world. In fact, some insects have something akin to our human eardrums. It's a delicate little membrane, given the name tympany. Our eardrums jiggle with the sound waves. That shaking is then turned into a signal our brain would understand. Now, you've surely heard the nightly serenade of crickets or the rhythmic song of cicadas in the summer. These little symphony masters use exactly this kind of setup to listen to their world. That's not all, though. Some bugs take a different approach to eavesdropping on their surroundings. They've got these sensory cells right in the middle of their antennae. This structure is called the Johnston's organ. Take mosquitoes, for instance, or bees, or even fruit flies. They use their antennae, not just to feel their way around, but to listen in on the world too. it gets even wilder. Hawk moths, some dusky, nocturnal creatures, have this unique organ nestled right in their mouths. It's like a superpower that lets them hear ultrasonic sounds. With this, they can dodge the dangerous dives of bats out on the hunt. When it comes to the ultimate hearing trophy, the animal kingdom has a completely unique winner. It's actually a moth. Not just any moth, though. It's the greater wax moth, discovered by the scientists based in Glasgow, Scotland. They've got some fascinating insights about these moths that make our ears want to stand up and listen. Just to give you some context, the greater wax moth does not stand out when it comes to its appearance. I mean, it's brown. As for its daily activities, it loves nibbling on honeycomb. Despite blending in seamlessly in the animal kingdom, it's got a serious set of ears. How good is its hearing, you ask? Well, it's been found that this tiny creature can pick up on sounds at frequencies up to 300 kilohertz. By comparison, our human ears can only detect sounds up to around 20 kilohertz. This already unimpressive ability drops to about 15 kilohertz as we grow older. I mean, not even dolphins can compete. They can only hear sounds up to about 160 kilohertz. You're probably wondering, why would a moth need such super hearing? Scientists explain that the reason behind this extraordinary hearing lies in a survival instinct, predation, to be precise. Bats use high-frequency echolocation calls to find their tasty moth meals, amongst other insects. But these clever little moths have evolved to pick up frequencies even bats might not hit. Despite this reasoning, it was a bit of a mystery as to why these moths would even need to hear such high frequencies. During the research, specialists discovered that their recording at high-frequency ultrasound is tricky business. So there's a chance that bats might actually be capable of emitting calls at these super high frequencies that the moths can hear. To uncover all this, scientists used a specially designed ultrasonic device. It emitted these crazy high frequencies, and they then looked at the moth's reactions using electrodes to measure their neural responses. The practical implications of this research could be far-reaching. Understanding the inner workings of the greater wax moth's ear could have a big impact on the world of technology. This knowledge could help researchers build super tiny microphones, for example. We know that all sorts of critters, from the tiny creatures scuttling on the ground to the gigantic ones swimming in the ocean, can pick up on certain sound frequencies that our human ears just can't. However, scientists have made a fascinating discovery. They've shown, for the first time, that our ability to pick up on tiny differences in sound frequencies might just be superior to that of animals, thanks to our individual neurons. How did they prove this, you ask? Well, they took advantage of a unique technique that lets them record what single neurons are up to in the auditory cortex. That's the part of our brain that's a major player in processing sounds when we're exposed to various noises. You see, most of what we know about the auditory cortex was unearthed from past research that studied how animals' neural activity reacts to sound. Those studies were super useful in giving us a peek into how sounds are processed in our auditory system. But they didn't really let us know what sets us humans apart in the way we perceive sounds. When scientists tested how we respond to made-up sounds, they found out that our neurons in the auditory cortex responded with a surprising level of accuracy to specific frequencies. They could even pick up differences as tiny as a quarter of a tone just by looking at the reactions of individual neurons. That's a level of detail that you wouldn't typically find in the auditory cortex of other mammals. The one exception might be bats, who use their hearing in pretty unique ways. But this could explain why we humans can distinguish between frequencies better than animals. It seems like the way our brains process sound frequencies has some special features to it. When they played more natural sounds like conversations, music, and everyday noise, the neurons showed complex activity patterns. these patterns couldn't be fully explained just by the neuron's frequency selectivity. Animal studies have shown similar phenomena, but it's the first time we've seen this in humans.
You're driving around with your friend Annie in the wild Australian outback. The sun is scorching hot, but you see a mob of cute kangaroos hopping around. You stop the car and you get out to film them with your friends. You even go live to impress your friends and followers. Suddenly, one of the kangaroos leaps towards you at full velocity, ready to swing. Alright, let's freeze right here for a second before you or your friend get hurt. Kangaroos have extremely powerful legs and can jump around 30 feet in the air. Those strong legs can let them hop at speeds of up to 30 miles per hour, faster than any average human. So if you're thinking of outrunning a mob of angry kangaroos or a single kangaroo, then don't. They'll chase after you and knock you down before you even reach your top speed. Their tails are strong and sometimes act like a fifth limb when they're grazing in a field. Kangaroos generally eat grass like cows, but also feast on shrubs, moss, and even fungi. Their tails are essential for keeping balance. They can stand as tall as 6 feet, with their tail making up half of that. Back to you guys. The kangaroo is only a few feet away from you. The first thing you have to do is protect your body. Turn it sideways and extend your arm out. Make sure your head is out of reach. Their paws have very sharp claws, so you don't want them laying any jabs on you, especially your head. They kick with both feet, which means they rest their body on their tails and extend both legs to push kick their aggressors, aka Annie and you. Their feet are huge, which makes them even more dangerous. Well, time is still frozen, so you and Annie get into position and are ready for the kangaroo attack. And action! The kangaroo stands face to face with you like a boxer in a ring. It moves closer, but you're in the correct position to reduce damage from your end as much as you can. Even though you know how to defend yourself, facing off with a 6-foot kangaroo isn't the best idea. The best you can do is slowly back away without startling it. Don't turn your back on it, you might get a surprise attack. If backing up doesn't help, let it know it's won this battle. Don't return any eye contact if you can. Cower yourself. You might have missed some warning signs while observing them from afar. The kangaroos weren't stomping their feet because they were excited to see you. They were telling you not to come any closer. When one of them hopped over to you, it stood high on its legs and flexed its muscles to show dominance. The biggest fail of all is that you pulled over while they were grazing peacefully. They thought of you as a threat and went into defensive mode. The mob has several joeys, or baby kangaroos, sticking their heads out of their mother's pouches. Female kangaroos have a pouch on their belly made of a fold of skin to house the babies. When they're first born, they're only the size of a grape, but then blossom to the giants that they are. Only after 10 months, joeys are old enough to move out of mom's pouch and hop on their own. So, you and Annie survived that confrontation for now. But what happens when you're face to face with a 40-foot kangaroo? I'm just kidding, we're keeping it real here. It would be super difficult to face off with a grizzly bear. The first thing you would need to know about grizzlies is that they're very cute when they're berry picking, or just scratching their backs on tree bark. But their dark side is scarier than a kangaroo's. You're having a little picnic with Annie when suddenly a grizzly bear approaches after smelling some yummy food. Don't panic, we'll freeze time here to give you a chance to think about what to do. In general, the best way to survive a grizzly attack is to avoid it altogether. Grizzlies are wanderers, always looking for the best spots to find some food. Their sense of smell is impeccable, so its nose led the bear right to your picnic. The bear is very close to you. No need to panic. You should show the bear that you're just a visitor on its territory. Back away slowly while speaking in a low and calm tone. It needs to know that you're submitting to it, as it's the dominant creature in this encounter. There's a lot of tension when you're face to face with a bear, so don't turn your back and make a break for it. That will only let the bear chase you down, and you won't win in that race. They're faster than humans and can swim and climb trees, so unless you sprout some wings and fly away, do not try to outrun a grizzly bear. Next, you should avoid eye contact. Just like the cute and cuddly kangaroos, bears take it very seriously and watch your every move. They also consider direct eye contact as a sign of aggression, as if you want to challenge them. Grizzlies also like to play a game of chicken. They wait to see your moves and can even fake a charge to see how you're going to react. Either way, you have to stand your ground. If the bear lowers its head and protrudes its neck towards you, then it knows that it wants to charge right at you. Since we froze time for now, we can't know for sure what its next move is going to be. Let's jump back into action to see what it'll do, because you'll have to plan your next move depending on the bear's move. And action! The grizzly bear isn't showing any signs of aggression so far. It's just curious about the setting. Remember your training, no eye contact. Okay, the bear is showing some signs of aggression now, which means it could potentially attack you. Stand your ground, it's getting closer. The best thing to do in this scenario is to completely submit to it by laying face down on the ground, covering your head with your arms. Don't move. The bear might understand that you're submitting to it and walk away. Sometimes bears will stick around for a while before leaving you alone. Luckily, this bear only wanted the food from the picnic, so it grabs the sandwiches and runs away. You guys were lucky this time, but if the bear did attack you, you'd have to fight it off as much as you can. You can use any objects nearby to help you. It's best to aim for the most sensitive spots, like the bear's eyes and nose, with all your strength. What makes cougars stand out from other predators is that they're excellent stalkers. You're hiking in the forest, and you don't realize that you have an unwelcomed guest along with you. Cougars will stalk you if they think you're good to eat and can pounce from out of nowhere, and if it knows it's the right time. These giant cats generally don't attack people, but who knows what's on their mind. The rule of thumb when face-to-face with a cougar is pretty much the same as with other animals. Stand your ground and don't run. Running will only trigger the cat.